Chapter 2837. She was born in a war-torn country. That country was in turmoil and constant wars. Because her family was Chinese, in that era, the international community looked down on Asians. Her father's personality was naturally weak. He chose to endure the bullying and oppression. Under such oppression, he struggled at death's door. Therefore, from a young age, she deeply experienced that weakness would only lead to endless bullying and coercion. She originally thought that her life would continue like this. However, until that year, in May, that country was incited by other countries and began to ostracize the H people. In the military riot, her father died under the gun and her mother was stripped naked by the locals. After humiliating her, her hands and feet were handcuffed and she was dragged through the streets in a car. On such a rocky road, a living person was dragged like a beast into a bloody mess. It was too horrible to look at. Until her mother died, she did not see her for the last time. In that riot, the H people died and were injured. But she did not choose to submit. The 7-year-old her chose to resist in the face of adversity. She was dragged into a cellar by a local ruffian. When she was about to be raped, she fiercely bit him and took the iron rod from his waist. She did not know where she got her strength from, but she actually knocked the ruffian unconscious. When she escaped from the cellar, out of instinct, she and a group of people arrived at the dock and boarded the rescue ship to M country. In one night her family was destroyed and she was homeless. How could she call it a foreign land? When she arrived in M country, she was accepted by a humanitarian organization. Then she was assigned to a special agent organization for training. The circumstances of her childhood made her deeply understand that weakness would only lead to bullying. Only by being strong could she be respected. Chu Ho collected her thoughts and changed into the clothes that Lin Mu prepared for her. The clothes had a bulletproof layer. Naturally, this layer could not withstand bullets at close range. Military boots that could hide a dagger. Infrared detector. She put the pistol on her waist and took out more than 100 bullets. She separately tied them to her boots and waist belt. Then she put away the equipment one by one and closed the trunk. Lin Mu hurried forward. Chu Ho, you really don't want to reconsider? Does the headquarters know that I'm still alive? Chu Ho suddenly asked. Lin Mu was startled and quickly shook his head. It was too rushed. I didn't have time to report. No need to report. Chu Ho casually wiped the gun with a cloth and lightly said, Vermilion Bird is already dead. The current me, I have my own name. Why? Lin Mu was in disbelief. The name Vermilion Bird is synonymous with supreme glory. You used to value the glory. How can you say that you want to give up the name Vermilion Bird so? The glory that you once regarded, you don't care? Chu Ho's hand movements suddenly froze. Chapter 2838. Whether it's fame or fortune, it's all in the past. Chu Ho suddenly interrupted him. Lin Mu was startled. Chu Ho calmly said, I'm just tired and want to rest. Although I'm not old enough to retire yet, I've seen a lot of bullets since I was young. I've never imagined that I could have a peaceful life. But Lin Mu, do you know? In these 5 years, I've lost all my memories, but I've lived a carefree life, a happy life. I have a sensible and well-behaved son. In these 5 years, I've never dreamed that I could be like an ordinary person, waking up every morning, quietly eating breakfast, and then going to work. When I get home, I have a well-behaved son. After dinner, I'll hold his little hand and go for a walk in the fields. As Chu Ho spoke, he actually laughed softly, although there are many things that aren't satisfactory. Compared to my previous life of being a police officer, it's much more blissful. In the past, I didn't even dare to dream that I would have my own family, my own child. Do you know? I named him Xiao Bao. There's no special meaning behind it. When he was born, his face was wrinkled and thin, but I felt that life was a miracle. When he grew up, he was chubby, white, and tender. I thought of many names, but in the end, I still called him Xiao Bao because he was my baby. Lin Mu silently listened. Chu Ho continued, I really like that kind of life. If I could, I'd rather live as Chu Ho instead of using the name Vermilion Bird. Sir, Chu Ho turned around and glanced at him. He suddenly smiled. This kind of feeling, the current you can't understand. It's getting late. Chu Ho looked at the sky and curled his lips. Send me to the Gu family's main residence. I want to see him as soon as possible. Lin Mu finally gave up. The two of them got in the car and Lin Mu started the car. He took a deep breath and stepped on the accelerator. Gu family's residence. Xiao Bao was coaxed to sleep. For the past few days, Gu Jinglian had arranged for him to rest in his bedroom. After these few days of getting along with each other, Xiao Bao Chu had also eliminated the estrangement between them and made up with him. He was finally willing to show him an innocent smile, no longer like before when he was in front of him, he was arrogant and looked down on him. Even now, he still called him uncle, uncle. Gu Jinglian did not rush him. He felt that it would be better to wait until the child adapted to the environment and let nature take its course. Adults get used to it faster than children. Gu Jinglian quickly adapted to his role as a new father. Gradually, he realized that he was a newbie stay-at-home dad. At the very least, when facing Xiao Bao, the sharpness on his body would always be subtly restrained. Although there were many times when Xiao Bao would be mischievous by his side when he was busy with work, it would also make him unhappy. He would also be angry at him, glare at him, yell at him, but no matter how annoyed he was, he could not bear to touch him. It was like a lion roaring at a mischievous cub. Although he was glaring at him, he would not really slap him. Chapter 2839. Therefore, no matter how fiercely he glared at him, the little guy did not seem to have any awareness. He even climbed onto his body provocatively, making funny faces at him and sticking out his tongue. Gu Jinglian was always amused by his funny little expression. Uncle said that Mommy will come to find me soon, but I've been waiting for a long time. Don't tell me that she still hasn't found me by the time Xiao Bao's hair turns white? Gu Jinglian raised his eyebrows. He was slightly displeased that the little guy mentioned that woman again. A certain man was jealous. He snorted coldly and suddenly threw out a historical question. Do you like Mommy more or Uncle more? Of course it's Mommy. Before he could finish his sentence, Gu Jinglian heard the word, Mommy, and his face suddenly sank to the bottom. Chu Xiaobao saw that his expression was not right and immediately changed the topic. His eyes darted around and then he said with a smile, Of course it's Uncle Moore. Good boy. The man was satisfied and reached out to gently ruffle his hair. But Xiaobao really misses Mommy. Chu Xiaobao muttered, Is Mommy playing hide and seek with me? She's deliberately hiding in a corner and deliberately not coming to find Xiaobao. She doesn't want you anymore. Gu Jinglian deliberately scared him. When Chu Xiaobao heard this, his face was full of disbelief. That's impossible. Mommy won't abandon me. Oh? Are you so sure? Gu Jinglian seemed to be very keen on provoking their mother-son relationship. He snorted coldly. If she doesn't abandon you, then why hasn't she come to find you for so long? It's probably because she hates Uncle. Baby Chu blurted out of the blue. Gu Jinglian's face darkened. What do you mean? In the past, when Xiao Bao saw that other children had fathers, Xiao Bao was very puzzled. Why do they all have fathers but I don't? Chu Xiaobao said and even showed a puzzled expression. After a pause, he continued, Later, Xiaobao asked Mommy why Xiaobao didn't have a father. Gu Jinglian could not help but be interested and said, What did she say? Xiaobao looked at his expression carefully and then blurted out, Mommy said that Daddy died early. What? Daddy died early? Gu Jinglian seemed to have been struck by lightning and his face was charred black. She said that I died early? Yeah, that's what he said. He said something about the grass on his grave being taller than me. Gu Jinglian's fists. This woman actually dared to use such despicable words to fool the child. He died early. Xiao Bao did not care at all. His words and actions were undoubtedly betraying his mother. He continued to complain, I only asked how Daddy died. Gu Jinglian looked at him questioningly again. What did your mommy say? Xiao Bao said plausibly, Mommy said that Daddy was hit by a car when he went out. Gu Jinglian was speechless. Hit by a car when he went out? How could she come up with such a ridiculous story? He slammed the table. Bullsh *T. Xiao Bao was frightened by Gu Jinglian's foul language. He shrank back and looked up to see that Gu Jinglian's originally exquisite and handsome face was now extremely gloomy. He suddenly realized that he had said something wrong. "Uncle, don't be angry." Chapter 2840. When Chu Xiaobao heard this, he did not buy it on the spot. "No way. If you dare to chop mommy into pieces, I'll." When Gu Jinglian heard this, he asked provocatively, "You'll what?" "Both." When Chu Xiaobao saw the murderous look in Gu Jinglian's eyes, he was instantly terrified. He gulped and said timidly, "I'll settle this with you when I grow up. At least you know what's good for you." He even knew that he was so small that even if they were arm wrestling, he would be flattened and rounded with just one finger. Gu Jinglian ravaged his little face heavily. At that moment, Uncle Fu pushed open the door and walked in. When he saw that Xiaobao was still in Gu Jinglian's arms, he immediately walked over and hugged him. "Xiaobao, it's getting late. It's time to rest." "No." Xiaobao's face fell immediately. He pulled a long face sullenly. The mention of sleep seemed to kill him. He nestled in Gu Jinglian's arms and stretched out his arms and legs, looking extremely comfortable. While Gu Jinglian was busy flipping through the dossiers, he would hang on to him like a little hamster and munch on snacks non-stop while watching the hottest fantasy dramas. Destiny Chronicles. He liked the beautiful young lady in the drama, so he was very happy watching it. His eyes stared fixedly at the picturesque person on the screen without blinking. When he heard that he was going to sleep, the little guy felt uncomfortable all over. "You don't want to sleep. It's still early." Uncle Fu glared at him. "It's still early? It's already past 10 o'clock. It's time to sleep early. You'll only grow taller if you sleep early." Uncle Fu used the same words that he used to trick other children to lure him. However, Xiaobao did not fall for it. He continued to pester and fool around in Gu Jinglian's arms, unwilling to sleep. Uncle Fu looked at this scene, and for some reason, he was on tenterhooks. It seemed that in his memory, other than the cat that Gu Jinglian had raised a few years ago, no other creature had dared to be so lawless and reckless in his arms. Gu Jinglian's attitude towards Chu Xiaobao had been quite gentle these days. It was probably because there had been nothing annoying in the past few days, and there had been no trouble in the business. This was because Gu Jinglian was rather patient in dealing with his unbridled nonsense. However, with Gu Jinglian's indulgence, Xiaobao seemed to be a little arrogant. Gu Jinglian treated him well, probably because his fatherly instincts had finally been awakened. As for this little guy, Gu Jinglian looked left and right and found him pleasing to the eye. "Let him watch for a while longer," Gu Jinglian said. When Fu Bo heard this, he pondered for a while before he mustered up his courage and said, "Master, you can't just let a child do whatever he wants and spoil him like this. You can't spoil him like this." "Who's spoiling him?" Gu Jinglian snorted arrogantly. "It doesn't matter if he sleeps a little later." Uncle Fu immediately explained, "The younger the child, the more he should get a good night's sleep. Otherwise, not only will he not grow taller, but his physical fitness will also deteriorate very quickly." Gu Jinglian narrowed his eyes slightly. "Oh, is there such a saying?" Uncle Fu nodded heavily. Gu Jinglian then said, "Then hurry up and take him to bed." Chapter 2841. "Let me look at it for a while more. I want to see that pretty lady. Go to sleep." Gu Jinglian pulled a long face. Xiaobao Chu finally knew how to behave. He did not dare to make a sound and allowed Uncle Fu to carry him to sleep. Gu Jinglian sat quietly in the study and quietly flipped through the documents. Until now, the Gu family still kept accounts in the form of written books. In modern times, they were called financial statements. However, they continued the ancient tradition. Whether it was the casino or other special transactions, they were mainly recorded in this way. Gu Jinglian had learned how to keep accounts since he was young. Therefore, his calligraphy was very beautiful. He quietly read the documents until 2 o'clock in the morning. The night was dark, but the wind was still and the clouds were gradually fading. After Chu Ho disguised herself, she entered the Gu family's back door through the secret underground passage. There was a secret passage in the Gu family's house with hidden mechanisms. This was the fastest way for insiders to enter the house from the outside world. Of course, the mechanism was set up very carefully. Those who were not from the Gu family did not know about these secret passages. Most people entered from the main entrance, but the entrance was heavily guarded. No matter how well you disguised yourself, they could tell at a glance whether you were an outsider or a member of the Gu family. Chu Ho naturally would not choose the main entrance. It was just that the secret passage had many password locks. She remembered the password locks. However, those passwords were from the Gu family a few years ago. She did not know if the Gu family had changed them in the past few years. Based on her understanding of Gu Jinglian, the password locks must be changed regularly. The passwords she remembered were probably already invalid. However, even if she did not remember, it did not matter. After all, she was from the intelligence department and had excellent investigative skills. Although the password locks of the Gu family were complicated, she could easily crack them if she was given time. Chu Ho went to the mechanical lock and studied it. The password had indeed been changed. She pondered for a while. This password lock was not very difficult, and she could easily crack it. However, when he reached the second gate, the password for the second mechanism lock seemed to be very difficult to decipher. In order to crack this password, Chu Ho spent more than half an hour. By the time the password was cracked, she was already drenched in cold sweat. If the password was entered incorrectly, the signal would be connected to the logistics of the Gu family. When the time came, the door would open, and she would be greeted by more than 100 elites from the Gu clan. Chu Ho fumbled his way into the Gu family's main residence through a secret passage. After exiting the secret passage, it was the backyard of the Gu family. The backyard was a few courtyards away from Gu Jinglian's house. Chu Ho looked up. What she saw was a rockery, flowing water, and pavilions. These were the best cover. It could be seen that many things in the back garden had been renovated in the past few years. Before this, she remembered that the back garden was filled with large patches of begonia flowers, but now, the begonia flowers no longer existed. Green bamboo, pine trees, pear blossoms, and roses. There was no trace of the begonia flowers in the garden. She used to love the begonia flowers in the garden the most. Every time the spring breeze blew, the flowers would be as pink as peaches, and the bouquets of begonia flowers would bloom proudly. At a glance, they were extremely beautiful and shocking. She did not have any preference for flowers. The only thing she liked was the begonia flowers. Chapter 2842. Who's there? Suddenly, a man's cold voice came from behind her. Chu Ho stopped in her tracks. Her back stiffened for a moment before she suddenly turned around. A man stood behind her, looking at her back suspiciously. He felt that this woman was too unfamiliar. There weren't many women in the Gu family. There weren't many women in the business to begin with, and those who could enter the main family could be counted on one hand. Therefore, it was easy for an unfamiliar woman to suddenly barge into the Gu family's main residence to attract attention. Chu Ho glanced at him from the corner of her eyes and said casually, "What's the matter?" "What's your name?" The man asked again, "Why haven't I seen you in the main residence before?" "It's natural that you haven't seen me before. Because I've always been by Old Master's side. It's natural that you don't know me. Is that so?" The man was still suspicious. Recently, Gu Jinglian's attitude towards women had been indifferent. It was probably because he had too many things to worry about in the Gu family in the past few months. He couldn't be distracted at all, nor did he have the heart to be distracted. Could it be someone from the main family? Impossible. As long as it was someone from the main family, even if he wasn't familiar with them, he should have seen them before. But he had never seen this woman before. Chu Ho saw that he was extremely vigilant, so she sighed helplessly and said, "It's fine if you suspect me, but there are some things that I need you to pass to him on my behalf, okay?" "What things?" Chu Ho looked around vigilantly and sighed. "Why don't you come over and take it? This thing is easy to break." The man was completely curious. He didn't know what exactly it was. It wasn't that he didn't suspect that this fellow would play some tricks. However, he thought that this was the main residence of the Gu family, who would have the ability to cause trouble in the Gu family's territory. With such a fearless thought, the man approached her. Chu Ho put her hand into her pocket. Just as the man straightened his neck and looked over to size her up, unexpectedly, Chu Ho suddenly took out a dagger from her pocket. She turned her head abruptly and aimed the sharp end of the dagger at the man's heart, almost stabbing it ruthlessly into his chest. Blood gushed out. The man subconsciously opened his mouth and wanted to scream, but Chu Ho took a step forward and covered his mouth, then viciously dislocated his neck. The man's head tilted to the side, and he immediately fainted. However, with such injuries, he would not wake up for a while. He would not die from excessive blood loss until someone found out that he had done it for her. Chu Ho set a time limit for herself. She would throw this man in a corner. When he was discovered and caused a commotion, if she still hadn't found the person she was looking for, she wouldn't stay any longer and would take advantage of the chaos to leave. Chu Ho fumbled his way into Gu Jinglian's house. As the main courtyard of the main residence, Gu Jinglian's style was evident everywhere. At first glance, the design of the house was very cold. Just like Gu Jinglian, it was gloomy and cold, but also arrogant and unreasonable. Against the moonlight, the lake water was desolate and bleak. Green bamboo and green pine were his favorite plants. After so many years, they had not changed. When she reached the steps, Chu Ho walked up the steps and entered the house. She vaguely identified the direction and slowly felt her way towards Gu Jinglian's bedroom. She suspected that Xiao Bao would probably be arranged to rest in his bedroom. She glanced at the time. Chapter 2843. At this time, that man was probably still in the study. He always slept very late and would only get out of bed at around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. However, he would wake up as soon as the sun rose. He would be busy the entire morning and sleep for another 3 hours during his lunch break. This was an opportunity. If she wasn't wrong, Xiao Bao was probably sleeping soundly on his bed at this moment. Chu Ho leaned closer to the door and carefully listened to the sounds in the room. She could faintly hear the sound of snoring. It wasn't heavy, but it wasn't light either. It was the kind of snoring that belonged to a child. This kind of snoring sound was very familiar to Chu Ho. Xiao Bao. It was Xiao Bao. He was in this room. Chu Ho was so emotional that her eyes turned red. She suddenly grabbed the door handle and twisted it gently. The room wasn't locked. She entered the room smoothly and silently locked the door. The room was very big. It was the master bedroom, a Chinese-style courtyard suite. The entire Gu residence was built in the Chinese style. Even the rooms were in the classic Chinese style. Chu Ho looked around. The furnishings in the room were slightly different from what she remembered. Indeed, the changes that 5 years brought to a person were incomparably huge. She passed through the arched door and slowly walked to the master bedroom. On the big bed, Xiao Bao's limbs were spread out. He was sleeping soundly. The weather had been a little cold for the past 2 days, and he had the habit of kicking off his blanket in the middle of the night. Probably because he had caught a slight cold, when he was sleeping soundly, snot bubbles were coming out of his small nostrils. Chu He, who was originally tense from head to toe due to her vigilance, could not help but burst into laughter at this scene. This guy. How could he sleep so peacefully? When she thought of this, she felt a little unbalanced in her heart. In order to find him, she had been obsessed with recovering as soon as possible. Now that she had taken great risks to sneak into the Gu residence, she didn't know that this little guy was sleeping peacefully here. However, the only thing that comforted her was that at least she could confirm that this stubborn little fellow had not suffered much in the Gu family. She had originally thought that this little guy was noisy. If he made Gu Jinglian uncomfortable, he would definitely not be polite to him. She did not expect that with Gu Jinglian's personality, he would be able to tolerate this fellow. She must have caused a huge ruckus at the Gu residence these past few days. This Gu Jinglian also did not deport him? Chu Ho didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She walked over and patted his chubby little face. With a muffled groan, she lowered her voice and said, "Xiao Bao." Wu. Chu Xiao Bao was immersed in his beautiful dream. Being disturbed at this moment, he narrowed his eyes and immediately reached out to slap her hand, muttering, "Don't be noisy. La, stinking Xiao Bao." Chu Ho was a little angry. He couldn't help but flick his face in an attempt to wake him up. It seemed that waking him up was too rough, and she felt a little sorry for him. Although Xiao Bao was only 5 years old, he already had a serious temper when he woke up. When she accidentally woke him up in the middle of the night, he would sit up in bed with a dirty face. Then, he would have an expression of wanting to cry, but no tears would come out. First, he would throw the pillow in frustration, then he would cry out in dissatisfaction, as if he was venting his displeasure from being woken up. Chapter 2844. She pinched his cheeks again and was about to reach out to hug him when he suddenly stopped her. Behind her, an ice-cold body stuck close to her. Chu-Ho's expression instantly stiffened. She was shocked and was about to turn around when she felt a cold and hard object pressing against her back. Based on her many years of experience, she immediately realized that this hard object was no other than a gun. She could even easily sense the cold air coming from the muzzle of the gun. Who was it? Chu-Ho broke out in a cold sweat. There was no other reason. When she entered the room, there was no one else in the room except for Xiao Bao, who was sleeping soundly on the bed. She had locked the door just now. Even if the person could unlock it from the outside, wouldn't it make some noise? However, this person not only did not make any noise, but she also did not notice when he was standing behind her. Her vigilance was very high, and her facial features were very sensitive, but when this man stood behind her, she did not notice at all. Chu-Ho did not dare to move, for fear that the man behind her would pull the trigger if she moved. She could not figure out this man's identity. Perhaps it was because she was too nervous that she lost the ability to make the first judgment when it came to strangers. However, after a moment of calmness, she suddenly smelled a faint fragrance. The fragrance of orchids? It was a somewhat familiar fragrance. Just as she was trying to figure out this man's identity, Gu Jinglian's cold voice sounded above her head. "I thought you wouldn't come." Chu-Ho's body suddenly trembled. This voice had been her curse for countless nights. Even in the 5 years when she lost her memory, she could always hear this voice in her dreams whenever she had trouble sleeping. It was like a demon, bewitching her heart. It was him. Gu Jinglian. He sucked in a breath of cold air and her back stiffened. "It's you? Why can't it be me?" Gu Jinglian raised his eyebrows and snorted. "This is my room. No one has the right to set foot here except me." Chu-Ho gritted his teeth. "I clearly locked the door. If you came in, why didn't you make any noise?" "Because from the beginning to the end, I have been in this room and have never left." "What?" Gu Jinglian smirked coldly. "I knew you'd come." Chu-Ho's judgment of him had probably always been his biggest mistake. This man had always been the most unpredictable one. When she was still an anti-mafia inspector, she had been ordered to stay by his side. As a spy, she had indeed stolen a lot of unfavorable evidence from him and submitted it to the headquarters. However, it was only later that she realized that the information she had secretly smuggled back to the headquarters was just a rarity to him. Those pieces of evidence were not enough to accuse him of a crime. She suddenly realized that perhaps, from a long time ago, he had already sensed her disloyalty and started to suspect her background and identity. As for the so-called evidence, it was nothing more than playing hard to get. It was to test her and find out more about her background. Chapter 2845. When Chu-Ho woke up again, she felt a chill all over her body. She suddenly opened her eyes and looked around, only to find that she was in a cold and damp cellar. Although it was called a cellar, it was more accurate to say that this was the Gu family's underground prison. It was specially used to imprison those traitors who had betrayed the Gu family. There were many torture devices in the prison. When Chu-Ho first entered the Gu family, she was lucky enough to see the torture devices of the Gu family. She did not know how cruel the torture methods of the Manchurian period were. She only saw with her own eyes that these ancient torture devices of the Gu family were enough to force even a tight-lipped person to give up here, wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves. Chu-Ho subconsciously wanted to stand up, but just as she stood up, her ankle was dragged back by a force. She was caught off guard and almost fell forward to the ground. When she turned around to look, she was shocked to find that her 4 limbs were tightly shackled by chains. Her wrists were suspended high in the air by the chains. Her ankles were also tightly wrapped by the chains. Damn it! Chu-Ho bit her lips tightly and stared at the bruises on her hands caused by the chains. The muscles on her face tightened. I said long ago that the Gu family is not a place where you can come and go as you please. Not far away, Gu Jinglian's evil voice sounded again. Chu Ho raised her head and stared in the direction of the voice with a pair of red eyes. She saw him sitting elegantly on the chair with the official's hat. His legs were elegantly crossed, and one of his hands was casually fiddling with the jade ring on his finger. His leisurely appearance was inexplicably compatible with the gloomy and cold cellar at this moment. Chu Ho had never been afraid of anyone. Except for Gu Jinglian. There was a kind of aura on him that made people feel intimidated. Even if he did not do anything or say anything, just sitting there, his entire body exuded a hair-raising aura. Especially the coldness that flashed by the corners of his almond-shaped eyes, it was really frightening. If Gu Jinglian was to be described as an animal, it must be a cold-blooded creature like a snake. Just his gaze alone would make anyone feel as if there was a cold snake coiled around their shoulders. The pair of snake eyes would expand as it stared at them covetously. The snake's body coiled tighter and tighter, enough to give people the illusion of suffocation. At this moment, Gu Jinglian's eyes fell on her body. Chu Ho's breath gradually rose and fell violently, unable to calm down. "What do you want?" Chu Ho asked through gritted teeth. "How dare you barge into the Gu residence alone?" The corners of Gu Jinglian's lips curled up coldly as he slowly retorted, "I'm the one who should be asking you what you want. My goal is very clear." Chu Ho did not beat around the bush and simply negotiated with him. He said word by word, "I'm here to bring Xiao Bao away." "Xiao Bao is my son." Gu Jinglian calmly revealed the truth. Chu Ho was stunned, then sneered coldly. "This is my son. My blood flows in his body. Similarly, my blood flows in his body too." After Gu Jinglian finished speaking, his brows furrowed slightly, as if he was a little conflicted. "We seem to have a dispute over custody rights? Listen, I can let you go, but I have a condition." Chapter 2846. Gu Jinglian slowly got up, walked to Chu Ho's side, and knelt down on one knee. Chu Ho couldn't help but be attracted by a piece of paper in his hand. She didn't know when, but there was an agreement in his hand. He spread the agreement on the ground and slowly pushed it in front of her. He said meaningfully, "Sign this agreement, and I'll let you go." "What is this?" Chu Ho was bewildered. How could this man be so kind as to let her go? What was this so-called agreement about? She didn't even have to think about it. It probably wasn't a good agreement. Gu Jinglian saw that she was sizing him up. His lips curled up coldly, and he said almost cruelly, "I've already drafted this agreement, but I still need you to sign it for it to be valid." "What exactly is this agreement?" Chu Ho looked him straight in the eye. "If you sign it, the agreement about you giving up Xiao Bao's custody rights will officially take effect." As Gu Jinglian spoke, he gently pushed the Indonesian agreement that his subordinate had presented to her. "It's not enough to just sign it. You also need to put your fingerprint on it." "Gu Jinglian." Chu Ho gritted her teeth and roared, "Don't even think about it. Xiao Bao is my son. Don't even think about taking him away from me." "You're not willing?" Gu Jinglian's voice suddenly turned cold. His gaze was no longer as gentle as before. A few cold rays burst from the corners of his eyes, and there was a hint of threat. "I won't sign this agreement," Chu Ho said resolutely. "He's my flesh and blood. You're giving me this lousy piece of paper and using my freedom to threaten me to give up Xiao Bao's custody rights? Don't you think it's ridiculous? Dream on." Hey, Gu Jinglian was a little annoyed by her yelling. He frowned coldly and sized her up a few times. He lamented, "Red Lotus, compared to 5 years ago, you don't seem to have changed at all." "How haven't I changed?" "Still so stubborn." Gu Jinglian slowly stood up and looked at her condescendingly. He suddenly bent down and grabbed her chin. His slender fingers squeezed her face tightly. "What right do you have to go against me now? If you know what's good for you, then sign this agreement obediently. For the sake of the child, I will let bygones be bygones." "Let bygones be bygones?" Chu Ho sucked in a few breaths of cold air as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. He wanted to laugh, but there was a lump in his throat. "Gu Jinglian." Isn't it enough that you've ruined my life? I will never allow you to ruin Xiao Bao's life again. I ruined your life? Gu Jinglian looked at him expressionlessly. Red Lotus, you're the one who ruined your life, not me. If you want me to give up Xiao Bao's custody rights and hand him over to you. Chu Ho's chest heaved up and down for a while. He suddenly said through gritted teeth, I'd rather kill him with my own hands when he was still in my womb than let him fall into your hands. Gu Jinglian's cold eyes shrank violently. Suddenly, the corners of his lips twitched. The curve was neither deep nor shallow, but it was obvious that he was really angry. You have a lot of backbone. He paused and looked around. Then his gaze fell on the torture equipment at the side. He sneered and said, I'd like to see how long your backbone can last. Chapter 2847. After leaving these cold words, Gu Jinglian swaggered off, leaving Chu Ho alone in the cellar. She was chained up in the cold, hopeless, and dark. Gu Jinglian left this order only if she was willing to relent and sign the agreement. Chu Ho soon heard the sound of metal clashing. She turned her head and saw a few tall men coming towards her. These men were all trained by Gu Jinglian. Not to mention that they had inherited Gu Jinglian's ruthlessness, they would definitely not show her any mercy. Pa! A sound was heard. A long whip hit her back hard. He let out a muffled groan. The sudden pain almost made her lose consciousness for a few seconds. The man wielding the whip had quite a bit of strength in his hand. The whip landed heavily on her back, leaving behind a deep bloody mark. Soon, a long tear appeared on the thin material of his clothes. The skin that was stained with blood was soon exposed to the air. The man was not in a hurry to whip her a second time. Instead, he took a basin of water from the side and poured it over her back. Walala! Chu Ho could not help but cry out in pain. Immediately after, she gritted her teeth fiercely, but her whole body started to twitch uncontrollably. What was this? Was this salt water? The brand new wound that was caused by the whip was suddenly soaked in salt water. This kind of pain made her mind blank. Chu Ho gritted her teeth. She gritted her teeth and her gaze fell on the agreement spread out in front of her. It was already wet with salt water. Xiao Bao's innocent smile could not help but appear in front of her eyes. Her heart suddenly tightened. Slap. Another lash landed heavily on her back. Chu Ho groaned in pain. Even the muscles on her face could not help but twitch. This kind of pain, even if she gritted her teeth, was not something that could be easily overcome with a few words. What was even more difficult to describe was the feeling of being a prisoner. Gu Jinglian. This vicious and merciless man. She had never thought that this man would use such a cruel method to try and take Xiao Bao away from her. Impossible. She would never let go. It was even more impossible for him to sign such a humiliating contract. Chu Ho finally couldn't hold it in any longer. He cried out in pain, his voice hoarse. Perhaps it was because she had just undergone a major surgery and was anxious to find Xiao Bao, so she tried her best to recover. In fact, she had not fully recovered. At this moment, with her old illness and new injuries, she fainted from the pain. Chu Ho's vision went black. His body leaned forward and fell face first onto the ground. Fainted? The man with the whip was surprised. Don't tell me he died from the collision? Another person stepped forward and kicked her a few times, but there was no reaction. It had only been 3 lashes, but he had already fainted. When he saw that this woman's mouth was so tough, he wondered how capable she was. However, this was also within reason. Don't underestimate these 3 lashes. A normal person would not be able to survive even 1 lash. However, she had endured 3 lashes. This was already not simple. Moreover, he had used a lot of strength and did not hold back. She would definitely not be able to withstand it. The man directly took a basin of salt water, grabbed her hair, and splashed it on her head. Chapter 2848. Chu Ho opened her eyes, which were bloodshot. So painful, because of the great pain, her eyeballs couldn't move very well. Are you going to sign it or not? The person beside her waved the whip in front of her. It seemed to be a threat, but it also seemed to be a threat. It was as if she said, no, the whip would come at her again in the next second. However, Chu He's lips quivered. She did not nod obediently and beg for mercy like a pug as he wished. Instead, she spat out 2 words coldly, "Don't even think about it." The person sneered and flicked the tail of the whip. It landed on the ground with a "pa" sound, which echoed continuously. "Woman, you're really stubborn. Boss has instructed that tonight, we'll stop until you sign." "Why? Do you want to die? If you can't even take these 3 lashes, how are you going to deal with the rest?" Chu Ho glanced at him from the corner of her eyes and retorted sarcastically, "You want to kill me or cut me up, don't you think? Either I die or I take the child away. There's no third option. Are you really not afraid of death?" The man was so angry that his face turned ashen. Before his master left, he had specifically instructed that she must sign it. His task was to force this woman to sign the agreement. If he couldn't complete his task, then the next person to be punished would be him. This woman was so stubborn. He was afraid that even if he whipped her again and again, there wouldn't be any changes. He couldn't possibly kill her, right? His master had also instructed him to keep her alive. If he killed her like this, wouldn't his master skin him and pull out his tendons? Thinking of this, the man couldn't keep up his airs. He couldn't predict whether this woman would die after a few more lashes. It had to be said that a person's life was very fragile at times. It was often a matter of a single thought. Hence, the man summoned his underling and asked him to quickly report the situation. The subordinate was also a quick-witted person. Seeing that Chu Ho was on the verge of death and on the verge of collapse, he was afraid that he could not hold on any longer and hurriedly ran into the study. Gu Jinglian was reading a book when his subordinate rushed into the study and said anxiously, "Master, that woman refused to sign and was whipped 3 times. She looks very weak. I'm afraid she can't take it anymore. If this continues, you'll definitely be beaten to death." Gu Jinglian frowned. "She still refuses to sign?" "Yes." The lackey nodded vigorously. "She fainted after being whipped 3 times. We went up to take a look and found that the bandage on her head was removed. It was a surgical scar, and the stitches hadn't been removed yet. From the looks of it, she had just undergone surgery and had yet to recover. These 3 whips had been ruthlessly lashed out. If this continued and she still refused to sign, she would be useless. If this goes on, someone will die." Gu Jinglian clenched his fists in anger. "She's really stubborn. I'm afraid it's because of her maternal instincts." The lackey sighed. "After all, asking a mother to give up her child's custody is crueler than any torture. Are you speaking up for her?" Gu Jinglian glanced at him suspiciously. He immediately defended himself. "It's no use. It's just that I feel that this girl is quite pitiful. She's a little stubborn, but it's hard to dislike her." Chapter 2849. Yes, the underling lowered his head in grievance. Observing his expression, he carefully probed. Then, "Master, do you think we should continue?" Just as Gu Jinglian was hesitating, Chu Xiaobao's cries suddenly came from the master bedroom. He suddenly got up and walked into the bedroom with a guarded expression. When he turned on the wall lamp, he saw that Xiaobao had woken up from his dream. He sat on the bed, hugging the blanket and sobbing pitifully. He must have dreamed of something scary, so when he woke up, he was so scared that he wailed loudly. He used the blanket to wipe his tears as he sobbed. Gu Jinglian walked over and sat on the side of the bed. He asked in a low voice, "Why are you crying?" "Xiaobao. Xiaobao dreamed of mommy." Chu Xiaobao rubbed his wet eyes and sobbed. "Xiaobao dreamed that mommy was standing by the bed and touching my face. But I don't know what happened, but in the blink of an eye, she disappeared. I chased after her and realized that she was walking away without looking back. No matter how I called her, she didn't seem to hear me. She didn't even turn around to look at me." Speaking of the pain, Chu Xiaobao cried even more pitifully. "I chased after her with all my might, but it felt like the road was so long that I couldn't catch up. She didn't even look back and walked further and further away. When I opened my eyes, I realized that I was back on the bed. Sob, sob, sob. Does mommy not want me anymore? Does she not want me anymore?" Gu Jinglian frowned. What was that saying again? It was called, Mother and son are connected by heart. In the past, he had thought that this saying sounded too pretentious. But now, he had seen it for himself. Mother and son were connected by heart. It was really strange. He immediately opened his mouth and said something that wasn't really coaxing. His tone was still gentle. "You're dreaming, Uncle," Chu Xiaobao immediately cried out. A huge sense of unease engulfed him. "Will Mommy really not want me anymore? If she doesn't want you, then she doesn't want you." Gu Jinglian immediately expressed his stance. "Uncle wants you." "No," Chu Xiaobao cried even harder. "Mommy, you can't abandon me. Why do you keep saying Mom? Can't you follow Uncle?" Gu Jinglian was a little unhappy. This was a terrible feeling. He didn't realize that he cared a lot about what the child thought of him. However, it was obvious that in Xiaobao's heart, Chu Ho's position was more important. Naturally, he was dissatisfied. Chu Xiaobao muttered, "You're not my father." He opened his mouth, but the words, "I'm your father," didn't come out. Due to his pride, it was impossible for him to admit defeat to a child. Thus, he changed the topic and asked, "How am I not?" "Mom didn't say you were." Chu Xiaobao acted like a mommy's boy. "If Mommy says you are, then you are. If Mommy says you aren't, then you aren't." Gu Jinglian was so angry that his face darkened. This child was only 5 years old, but he was already so biased towards that woman. How could this be? However, he didn't think about it in another way. Since this child was born, he and Chu Ho had depended on each other. If he didn't stick to Chu Ho, who else could he stick to? This nominal father of his had left a very bad impression in his heart at first. It couldn't be helped that the child didn't want to get close to him. But who was Gu Jinglian? Chapter 2850. Chu Xiaobao was crying for his mother, and even Uncle Fu couldn't coax him. Gu Jinglian couldn't take it anymore and shouted, "Don't cry. If you cry again, you won't be able to see her again." Chu Xiaobao sobbed and asked innocently, "If I don't cry, can I see my mother?" "As long as you don't cry." Chu Xiaobao immediately nodded. "But Xiaobao won't cry. It was a promise." Gu Jinglian walked out of the bedroom and immediately ordered, "Go and clean that woman up." Uncle Fu was confused when he heard this. He had just heard that an audacious woman had barged into the Gu residence. Old Master had sent this woman to the cellar. He had heard that this woman was Xiaobao's biological mother, but he hadn't had the time to find out the whole story. "The woman you're talking about, could it be that you're referring to the woman you locked in the cellar?" "Yes." Gu Jinglian said with disgust, "Xiaobao is crying for his mother. Go and clean her up. Don't get her covered in blood." "Yes, I got it." Uncle Fu trembled in fear as he responded. He watched as Gu Jinglian left the room. He didn't know where he was going. Naturally, he didn't dare to ask about his whereabouts. On the way to the cellar, Uncle Fu's imagination ran wild. He wondered what kind of woman could be pregnant with Old Master's child. It should be a beautiful woman, right? Old Master kept a close eye on women. The contraceptive measures were well taken, and such things would never happen. Old Master had a bad temper, and he didn't have much patience for women. This character wasn't born this way, but had been cultivated in the Gu family since he was young. The violent environment had instilled in him an extremely sinister and perverse character. However, Uncle Fu knew that Old Master's nature wasn't bad, but he had always been the one to call the wind and summon the rain. He was used to being spoiled. If he wanted the moon in the sky, no one would dare to pluck the stars for him. Just like that, he became a man of his word. His personality was very cold, or perhaps he had a soft side, but he was stingy with his words. He would never allow himself to show too much tenderness. Firstly, it was because of his identity. He was the supreme leader of the Gu clan. As the head of the Gu clan, he had to conform to the image of this identity. Secondly, there were many pairs of eyes in the Gu family watching them closely. Just like the leader of a pride, only by becoming the most ruthless could he be respected by everyone. However, he was still a mortal after all. In the end, he revealed his soft-hearted side. When he walked to the cellar, the few people guarding Chu Ho saw that he had arrived. It was as if they had been granted amnesty. "Uncle Fu, you're here." What did Master say? How are they? Uncle Fu asked first. Uncle Fu, why don't you take a look first? Just now, he fainted again. We don't know what to do. Master said to bring him back to his room first. As Uncle Fu spoke, he walked to Chu Ho's side and lowered his body to look at her. This person can't be dead, right? Uncle Fu was a little worried. He saw that she was covered in wounds. Her hair was messy and covered her face. There was a pool of salt water under her body. There were 3 whip marks on her back. They were very eye-catching and her flesh was badly mutilated. This was a girl. Why was she so heavy-handed? She's still breathing, but I was a little too heavy-handed just now. I don't know. As he spoke, Uncle Fu had already flipped her over. It didn't matter if she didn't flip over. Chapter 2851. It didn't matter if she didn't turn over. When she turned over, Uncle Fu was shocked. Red Lotus? He blurted out the name in shock. How could it be her? Or was she Xiao Bao's biological mother? Uncle Fu had a deep impression of this name. 5 years ago, Red Lotus had a high status in the Gu family. There was no other reason than that she was the closest person to Gu Jinglian in the entire Gu family, other than him. How could this be? How could old Master allow Red Lotus to be pregnant with his child? Moreover, Red Lotus was an undercover agent of the Interpol. She was a traitor of the Gu family. Old Master would never allow her to live. It was unbelievable. He looked at the mess on her body again. Beside her hand, there was a letter of confirmation wet with salt water. Uncle Fu picked it up and looked at it again and again. It was a letter of confirmation about giving up custody of Xiao Bao Chu. Old Master has instructed us to use whatever method we have until she signs it. The person beside him immediately explained, but we've already used up all our methods. This woman is very stubborn. Even in this state, she hasn't given in. Her character is indeed like that. Uncle Fu was not surprised. All right, let's not talk about anything else. Let's carry her into the guest room first. She's so dirty. Are we going to carry her into the room directly? This is old Master's order. Uncle Fu snorted coldly. Are you doubting my words? No. Since it's old Master's order, shouldn't we do as he says? His subordinates did not dare to delay and immediately carried her away. Uncle Fu sent a few maids into the room. One of them was responsible for removing Chu Ho's clothes, while the other was responsible for cleaning her body and disinfecting the wounds on her body. A doctor came and examined her. He was so shocked that he kept shaking his head. Uncle Fu immediately asked what had happened. However, the doctor said, "This girl just had an operation." What? Look at the gauze on her head. Do you see the scar? I haven't put it away properly. I haven't even removed the thread yet. The doctor paused for a moment and shook his head helplessly. The old injury plus the new injury has greatly damaged his vitality. I'm afraid he won't be able to get out of bed for at least half a month. So serious? Uncle Fu was shocked. The doctor nodded his head heavily. This lady had surgery on her head. Even though it was a minimally invasive surgery, it still damages her vitality. Looking at this scar, it probably hasn't been long since the surgery. With these new injuries, if she doesn't rest well for a while, her body will definitely collapse in the future. I got it. Uncle Fu nodded. Then prescribed some medicine for her to recuperate her body. All right. The doctor prescribed some medicine and handed it to Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu immediately sent someone to get the medicine. The Gu family had a pharmacy and a private medical school. They mainly focused on traditional Chinese medicine. When Gu Jinglian was young, his body was not in good health. He had also used traditional Chinese medicine to recuperate. Hence, Gu Jinglian believed in traditional Chinese medicine very much. In the entire capital, the best doctors of traditional Chinese medicine were all settled in the Gu family's main residence. After getting the medicine, Uncle Fu immediately sent someone to decoct it. However, Chu Ho's body was full of injuries. He was afraid that she wouldn't be able to wake up for a while. Chapter 2852. However, this coma lasted for half a month, and he did not open his eyes. Of course, this was all in the future. Ever since Chu Ho fell into a long coma, Gu Jinglian assigned a few people to take turns to watch over him. Xiao Bao, on the other hand, was left to the nanny to take care of. However, he did not know if the little guy was lovesick. Ever since he woke up from that nightmare, he did not eat well, and he always talked in his sleep in a daze. It was probably because he missed his mother. After all, he had never been separated from Chu Ho for such a long time. However, the sad thing was that Xiao Bao did not know that Chu Ho was lying quietly on the bed next to his room. No one knew when he would wake up. Uncle Fu invited the doctor over 3 times. After all, he had not woken up for so long, and it was not a good idea. If he continued to be in a coma, how was he going to explain it to Old Master? The doctor came to take a look and did a series of tests. In the end, the conclusion was also inconclusive. He only said that Chu Ho's body was severely damaged, probably because he had been suffering from old and new injuries all this time. If the human body was compared to a machine, the human body was also operated by various precise parts. For example, with the passage of time, the parts of a computer would age, and the system would become sluggish. Perhaps due to collisions during use, the internal parts would also be damaged to varying degrees. It was the same for the human body. Chu Ho had received training when he was very young. During training, it was inevitable that he would get injured. In addition, he had been constantly honed in his career as a secret agent and a criminal police officer. He had suffered countless injuries of various sizes. There were bone fractures, dagger wounds, and bullet wounds. There were 2 gunshot wounds on her back. There was a 5-centimeter scar on the side of her waist. She had been slashed by a Nepalese army knife when she was in close combat with a mercenary during a mission. At that time, she had lost a lot of blood. With her amazing willpower, she managed to survive until rescue arrived. There were too many old injuries, and her vitality was greatly damaged. Therefore, once she collapsed, she would really collapse. It would take a long time for her to recover. Uncle Fu's heart ached when he heard that. He looked at the person lying quietly on the bed, but he did not know that this girl had accumulated so many injuries. Just 1 week later, the filming for Extreme Youth was completed. After 4 months, the shooting of the 30-episode youth idol drama came to an end. After the filming of the 26th episode had just ended, the director happily announced that the copyright had been exclusively bought out by the largest video website, PPTVI. Just based on the popularity of Gu Xingzhe and Yun Shishir, the price of the broadcasting rights alone had already reached 9 figures, setting a new record. Although this kind of theme was a little unpopular, it did not affect the investors' expectations for the ratings. After all, Gu Xingzhe was the main lead in the movie, which meant that his popularity was guaranteed. Gu Xingzhe and Yun Shishir were known as the 2 most beautiful women in the entertainment industry. No matter how bad the viewership ratings were, they could still recoup their capital. If he became popular, he would be able to earn a lot of money. Because of PPTVI's exclusive buyout, many television stations were unable to fight for the simulcast rights, which was a pity. Chapter 2853. After the filming ended, the crew held a grand celebration party. In order to promote the show, the entire crew created a popular variety show. The show was called Ace Intelligence Bureau. It was an entertainment show where rising stars competed with variety shows. Once it was released, the ratings were very high. Surprisingly, Gu Xingzhe also participated in the recording of the show. Gu Xingzhe rarely accepted variety shows. Because of his celebrity status, he definitely wouldn't end a variety show that had a poor reputation and childish style. There were many high-quality variety shows, but because of the conflicting schedules, he really did not have the energy to deal with these noisy variety shows. Other than some interview shows, Ace Intelligence Bureau was probably the only variety show he accepted after The Love Diary. The script was quickly written and distributed to everyone. Variety shows had scripts. The artists on the show just had to memorize the script and know the content of each segment in advance. In this era of entertainment, even if they did not have any works or popularity, as long as they had enough variety shows and the ability to react on the spot, many A-listers could even gain a lot of passers-by through variety shows. Previously, There was a model who participated in a sports reality show. Because of her strong sense of variety, her value skyrocketed. From 200,000 yuan, her appearance fee was now in the millions. With this amazing popularity, she took on many movies and TV series. Although her acting skills were difficult to describe, it was not that she was not a professional, nor was she born to be an actress. No matter how good the director was, she did not have the aura of an actress. But even so, with the popularity she gained from variety shows, her annual income from endorsements was close to tens of millions. 8:00 p.m. All the main creators were in place and the recording of the show officially started. Every segment was very unique. After the hot opening dance, it was time for the game segment. The game segments were nothing more than games that were popular and could highlight the sense of variety and attraction. For example, 2 people and 3 people, or you draw and I guess. Although Xianxia did not do many of these, she was tired of watching them. However, under the company's training, her sense of variety increased day by day. During the game, she completely threw away the burden of being an idol and fought fiercely with the other guests. One of the games was to wear a special sumo suit and play sumo in a place similar to an arena. Xianxia was wearing a bloated fighting suit. She and Hua Jin were on the same team as Xianxia and another female host. She discussed it with Hua Jin and decided to work together to get rid of Xianxia. Hence, Hua Jin was in charge of charging forward. With a roar, he charged towards Xianxia, who was also wearing a sumo suit, like cannon fodder. Wow! Hua Jin roared angrily, but unexpectedly, Xianxia nimbly dodged and he missed. Xianxia leaped up and kicked Hua Jin's butt. Hua Jin was caught off guard and fell to the ground. Xianxia was completely dumbfounded. This Hua Jin was too weak. Hua Jin immediately stood up and charged towards Xianxia again. Xianxia did not hesitate and also charged towards Xianxia. The 3 of them were entangled together, pushing and shoving each other. Chapter 2854. The female host, who was standing at the side, could not bear to watch this any longer. She stepped forward to help the superstar, but who knew if the superstar had done it on purpose or by accident? He lifted his leg and accidentally kicked her off the stage. Eliminated. Ha! Everyone in the audience was rolling over in laughter. This time, it was a 2v1. Xianxia grinned wickedly as she and Hua Jin besieged him together. Little did they expect that, even after losing a teammate, the superstar would still be so valiant. In just 2 minutes, he had taken down both of them. The audience was in an uproar. The viewership ratings for the gaming segment kept rising. Very soon they took the top spot. Next up was the talent segment. The production team sent out Xianxia to showcase her singing skills. Xianxia sang the theme song for the drama. Lunatic. This song was composed by Xianxia and written by Xianxia. As the theme song for the drama's trailer, Ace Intelligence Agency had spent a lot of effort to get this song to premiere. Xianxia was a little nervous at the beginning. After all, she didn't think her singing was very good. But as the atmosphere warmed up, she gradually relaxed. All the guests were sitting on the sofa. Xianxia stood in the middle of the stage, holding the microphone and singing with deep emotion. The only crazy thing I've ever done is to love you until the end of the world. Only until now your story, there's no place for me, become a hostage of my own making, lose all reason at the end of the road, but your paranoia, your memories, never have my name, never leave a mark in your heart, awake when I dream, love you, I'm a lunatic missing you, I miss you, hate you, I'm a lunatic but my heart hurts, you don't understand, I'm afraid it's too late, love you one more time, how lucky am I to meet you in my... The melody was beautiful and lyrical, but it was full of despair. Xianxia looked at her silently from beginning to end. Even when the song ended, he was still in a daze for a long time. He seemed to be deep in thought, but no one knew what he was thinking. Next, it was an interview. The main cast and crew sat on the sofa as the host kept asking questions about the filming. Halfway through the conversation, the host suddenly turned to Xianxia and asked curiously, "Xianxia, you haven't been acting in TV dramas these years. Extreme Youth is probably your first comeback project after 2 years of absence from the TV industry, right?" Xianxia nodded lightly. The host continued asking, "Why did you take on this drama? Another host chimed in, I heard that Gu Xingze is also a car racer and his driving skills are outstanding. He casually said, actually, this is probably my last TV series. Oh. The host's eyes widened in surprise. The others zzz. Are you planning to focus on your film career after this movie? Gu Xingze denied, no. Then, why did you say that? Gu Xingze looked up slightly and faced the camera. His lips curled into a faint smile. Because I'm planning to officially retire from the entertainment industry. The air suddenly became quiet. Xianxia looked at him suddenly. There was an uproar. The audience below the stage exclaimed in surprise. Of course, the fans didn't believe it. Quiet. Chairman Gu is being naughty again. Chapter 2855. Naturally, the host did not believe him and asked suspiciously, Xingze, are you kidding me? You can't do this. You have to know that there are many of your loyal fans sitting below the stage. If you quit the entertainment industry, your fans will be scared to tears. It's true. Gu Xingze said calmly, in the 10 years since my debut, I have indeed won a lot of glory, but I think it's time to put an end to my 10 years. The entertainment industry is shameless and is always injecting new blood. There are many outstanding newcomers with good acting skills, but they don't have the opportunity to appear in front of the camera. I think I should give up this opportunity and give the younger generation more opportunities to perform. No. The fans below the stage screamed uncontrollably. The scene was out of control. Many fans held up billboards and shouted Gu Xingze's name in support. The director also revealed his face from behind the camera and looked at the stage with some confusion. He was very surprised and hesitated for a moment. Now that the scene was out of control, he wondered if he should rush in with the advertisement and cut this part out. Although it was a live broadcast, there was a 10-minute time difference between what was shown on TV and what was shown on TV. This was to prevent any accidents from happening and to edit it in time. However, even the director was stunned. This sudden announcement was not part of the script. Everyone was flustered and did not know how to react. Fortunately, the host reacted quickly and immediately returned to his senses and continued the interview. Why did you decide to quit the entertainment industry? Actually, all your fans have seen the glory you have achieved since your debut. Now that you are so popular, isn't it irrational to choose to quit the entertainment industry? In the beginning, entering the entertainment industry was just a change in life for me. I did not treat it as my entire life. However, with the rise of popularity, this job gradually became a responsibility. Gu Xingze paused and smiled slightly. He continued, however, being in a high workload state all the time makes one feel tired. I don't get a good rest every day, so my fans want to see more of me in front of the camera. My works, my new songs, and even my advertisements. A lot of work far exceeds my workload. Being in this state for a long time is really a very negative way of life. So, don't quit the entertainment industry. Many fans were so emotional that they cried. Hua Jin was also stunned. Xianxia felt even more conflicted and did not know how to react for a moment. She had never imagined that this program would be his farewell ceremony from the entertainment industry. Was he really going to quit the entertainment industry? Gu Xingze glanced at the audience and suddenly stood up. He walked to the front of the stage and smiled faintly at a fan who was covering her face in pain. Don't cry, okay? Xianxia, we love you. The fans were sobbing and begging him to stay. Gu Xingze laughed. Don't be sad, okay? I'm just quitting the entertainment industry, but that doesn't mean you won't see me in the future. I'm just too tired. Xingze. The fans cried bitterly, don't be so tired. You don't have to accept so many drafts. We are all willing to wait for you. But, without any works, artists will be outdated. Gu Xingze said helplessly, being outdated is more painful than retiring. Chapter 2856. You'll never be out of date. You'll always be our star. You'll always be our favorite idol. Xingze, don't make such a joke. We'll go crazy. Xingze, if you leave the industry, my heart will die. The scene became extremely sad. Even Gu Xingze, who never accepted emotional content, was teared up by the fans' passionate pleas and sorrowful tears. He turned around and slowly returned to his seat. When he turned around again, his handsome face was reflected in front of the camera. His eyes were so red that it made one's heart ache. I made this decision after much consideration. Gu Xingzi sucked in a deep breath of cold air and finally said slowly, I've already booked a flight to America. I'll go back to university to pursue my postgraduate studies. With that, he put down the microphone, stood up abruptly, and left the studio resolutely. The scene was completely out of control. The fans' cries drowned out all the noise. All the main creatives of the production team looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Ever since the show was broadcast, it was the first time that it had to stop halfway because of such a sudden incident. On Weibo, netizens uploaded the edited footage of Gu Xingzi's official announcement of his retirement from the entertainment industry. It quickly caused a lot of heated discussion. Gu Xingzi announces his retirement from the entertainment industry. Gu Xingzi's era is over? Gu Xingzi's retirement from the entertainment industry has a hidden reason? Gu Xingzi is unwell and announced his retirement from the entertainment industry to recuperate in America? On the internet, the fans were in an uproar because of this matter. Gu Xingzi's latest Weibo post was quickly pushed to the top of the trending list. Many fans left comments to persuade their idol to stay. Many of them had become Gu Xingzi's fans since they were in school. Until now, some of them had become moms, and some of them had matured and grown up. Gu Xingzi had debuted for 10 years, and their fans had been around for 10 years. From the popular newbie when he first debuted to the Triphibian Heavenly King now, the name Gu Xingzi was the youth of many people. One could imagine how much of a shock this news was to Gu Xingzi's die-hard fans. It was too sudden. He was not mentally prepared at all. This was like bad news. How painful was that? Many fans who chased after celebrities could empathize with them. When the entire cast and crew returned home, Xianxia noticed that Gu Xingzi had quietly left the cast and crew's group chat. She immediately called Qin Zhou. Qin Zhou picked up the phone and talked about this matter. Qin Zhou helplessly said that he also just found out about it. Without any warning, Gu Xingzi announced his withdrawal and did not mention it to anyone. Even a close friend like Qin Zhou had never mentioned it to him. Why are you suddenly saying that you want to quit the entertainment industry? Xianxia was puzzled. What's going on? After I found out about this, I kept calling him, but I couldn't get through. Could something have happened? Xianxia could not help but worry. Chapter 2857. I understand. Xianxia hung up the phone. Qin Zhou told her not to care about this matter. But how could she not care and not think about it? Xianxia could not help but feel upset and did not rest well the entire night. In the WeChat group, after a heated discussion, the director said, Xingzi's announcement of his withdrawal from the entertainment industry is his personal decision. We have no right to interfere with how he decides his own life. Don't talk too much about it. Soon, the group was dead silent. On Weibo, the heated discussion about Gu Xingzi's incident never stopped. Many fans acted as if it was the end of the world and wantonly expressed their emotions on Weibo. Many people posted their purchases of Gu Xingzi's records, movies, albums, and all kinds of merchandise. Some of the posters had already turned yellow and were stained with the traces of time. Some of the records had Gu Xingzi's signature written on them. Fans cried and complained that the name Gu Xingzi was all her youth. She had thought that she could stay by this idol's side until the end of time. Her sentiments resonated with countless fans. Those who had never pursued an idol probably did not know how it felt. It was a feeling more painful than being heartbroken. At this time, many keyboard warriors also appeared and wantonly accused Gu Xingzi's fans of being brainless fans. Instead of paying attention to the matter of number 8 in the Sky Palace, they actually paid attention to an entertainer. Entertainers are really ruining the country. Instead of paying attention to national affairs, they actually pay attention to a celebrity. I'm so disappointed in young people these days. I heard that Gu Xingzi's annual income is 9 figures. He's just an entertainer. How can he earn so much money? Those scientists who work hard on the front lines can't even earn 1% of this in their lifetime, right? This country is going to be finished. Soon, fans retorted. We can't make decisions on national affairs. But after liking Xianxia for so many years, we've received a lot of positive energy from him. He works hard and is passionate about public welfare. He's an outstanding young idol. There are too many fascinating things about him. This is irreplaceable. Loving Xianxia has become a way of life for countless of us fans. The scolding war continued to escalate. After Xianxia announced his retirement from the entertainment industry, it triggered a series of wars. Xianxia didn't want to pay attention to these disturbances. She put the phone on the pillow, but her mind was preoccupied. The next morning, Xianxia was woken up by a phone call from Xiaoxue. Xianxia. It was a deafening roar. Xiaoxue cried in despair. Do you know? Xianxia announced his withdrawal from the entertainment industry. Woo 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 woo. What should I do? What should I do? I'm heartbroken. Just as Qin Zhou had predicted, Xianxia held a grand press conference at 9 o'clock in the morning in the conference room of the five-star hotel. In front of the camera, Xianxia stood on the rostrum with a calm expression. The flashlights flashed, illuminating his face with white light. I officially announce that from today onwards, I, Xianxia, will be leaving the entertainment industry. After he finished speaking, he bowed deeply. His calm expression was hidden in the shadows. The press conference was broadcasted live on different video websites. The television stations took turns to broadcast it and reported it seriously. Xianxia's calm and handsome face was projected on the big screen in the mall. Chapter 2858. Many fans gathered under the big screen. When they heard this news, they covered their mouths and choked. This was probably the most morale day in the entertainment industry. 2 days after the press conference, this matter was still fermenting. Because of Xianxia's matter, extreme youth suddenly became the center of attention. When the entire production team was doing promotions, only Xianxia was absent. In the face of the media's questions, all the topics revolved around Xianxia's name. The entire production team was very embarrassed. All the media was targeting a lead actor who was no longer participating in any promotions. This was the most frustrating thing. There were some questions that they also wanted to answer, but what exactly were the answers? Why did Xianxia quit the entertainment industry? Even they did not have an answer. The director kept repeating, "Please don't ask questions that have nothing to do with the production." I'm sorry, I don't know. However, the media seemed to want to get to the bottom of it. Backstage, the director almost flew into a rage. Xianxia, why are they all asking questions about him? It's not like we can interfere with a decision like quitting the entertainment industry. We have no way of knowing the reason for quitting. These media outlets really have no standards at all. When Xianxia heard this, her heart sank. Xianxia's fans are too much. Isn't it just quitting the entertainment industry? It's like they're crying at a funeral. Look at those brainless fans at the venue. It's as if I'm the one who forced Xianxia to quit. It's so annoying. When Hua Jin heard the director's words, he felt a little uncomfortable. Crying at a funeral? Director, do you have to say such harsh words? Am I not telling the truth? The director was really angry. Why are you sticking up for him? I think it's unreasonable and too much for you to say that about senior Xianxia's fans. Hua Jin said, perhaps Xianxia has long had the idea of quitting the entertainment industry because of his health. When we were filming the show that day, I could tell that he didn't look too good. However, even if he wanted to quit the industry, it would have been after filming all the scenes and when the production team was wrapping up. His withdrawal from the industry had indirectly helped the production team gain popularity. But even if he has decided to quit the entertainment industry, you shouldn't say that about his fans out of basic respect. Who do you think you are? The director cursed. Hua Jin, are you trying to challenge me? Who do you think you are? You're just a gigolo who was raised as a mistress and relied on the unspoken rules to get to where you are. I say, those brainless fans, why are you blindly interfering? Get lost. You! Hua Jin was furious and glared at him. He had dug up all the old grudges and even used such malicious words against him. He was so excited that he wanted to rush forward. Yun Shirshir immediately stopped him. Hua Jin, don't be rash. Under her persuasion, Hua Jin finally managed to hold himself back. However, she turned around and suddenly walked over to the director. She stopped in front of him. Shirshir, what are you doing? Before he could finish his sentence, Yun Shirshir raised her hand and slapped him across the face. Everyone couldn't help but be dumbfounded. There were many big shots who dared to challenge the director. However, Yun Shirshir was the first person to slap the director in front of everyone. She was crazy. What are you doing? The director covered his face and flew into a rage out of humiliation. Chapter 2859. If you don't respect others, don't expect others to respect you. Then, Yun Shirshir said calmly, Director, I think Hua Jin is right. You don't have to take out your anger on Xianxia's fans for the media's mistakes, and you don't have to use those despicable words to insult Hua Jin. The director gritted his teeth and glared at her. But he only dared to glare at her. Who was Yun Shirshir? Mu Yaja's wife. Just the name Mu Yaja alone was something he could not afford to offend even if there were 10 of him. Therefore, he could only swallow his anger after being slapped by her. Yun Shirshir returned to Hua Jin's side and held his hand. Let's go. Because of her slap, Hua Jin's pent-up anger dissipated a lot. After leaving the television station building, Hua Jin said a little gloomily, Actually, I feel quite disappointed when Gu Xianxia left the entertainment industry. Disappointed? Yes, he has always been my goal. I have always regarded him as my beacon. I hope that one day, I can replace him and become a popular idol. However, I feel quite disappointed when he leaves the entertainment industry. Yun Shirshir's lips twitched. You can't surpass him. Everyone can't be replaced. Moreover, he is the idol of the Triphibian Heavenly King. Just by singing, he can crush you to death. You can't sing well, so how can you compare to him? He has won an international music award. What about you? You have to rely on post-production tuning to sing the theme song. Hua Jin pouted. Stop talking. His heart ached. The video of Gu Xianxia's press conference was broadcasted through various channels and presented to the public. He was the symbol of an era. His 10 years had been incomparably glorious. Fans had fantasized about accompanying him through his second decade and third decade. However, they suddenly received the news of his departure. All the fans were devastated by this shocking news. Their overly fanatical behavior caused the other netizens to be dissatisfied. They began to denounce these die-hard fans on a large scale. The internet was in a mess. Yun Shirshir didn't know how she felt about this matter. However, the feeling of loss stayed with him for a few days. After bidding farewell to Hua Jin, she slowly walked along the street aimlessly. However, little did she know that a black car was slowly following behind her. She was so immersed in her own thoughts that she didn't realize that there was a car following closely behind her. His phone suddenly rang. Yun Shirshir picked up her phone and saw Gu Xianxia's name on the screen. Xianxia? What's wrong with him? Disregarding her doubts, she quickly picked up the call and placed the phone to her ear. Gu Xianxia's calm and gentle voice could be heard from the other end. Shirshir, it's me. Yun Shirshir was stunned. She stopped in her tracks and froze on the spot. It had been a long time since he had called her by her name. Perhaps it was because calling her Shirshir was too intimate and ambiguous. Hence, he had always called her by her full name. Now, this sudden gentle call had really caught her off guard. Xianxia, are you on the street? Gu Xianxia heard some noises and car horns on the other end of the line and guessed that she was on the streets. Yeah. Yun Shirshir said, I saw the live broadcast of your press conference. Chapter 2860. I saw the live broadcast of your press conference. You really have the heart to do that? Yun Shirshir looked around. Coincidentally, there was a big screen in the shopping mall not far from her. On the screen, Gu Xianxia's announcement of his retirement from the entertainment industry was still being played. Below the screen, there was a circle of fans. Even though there was a distance between them, Yun Shirshir knew that the eyes of these fans must be filled with tears. Your fans really can't bear for you to quit. Yun Shirshir sighed. You might be a little too heartless. Why did you quit the entertainment industry? There's no reason. I'm just tired of living in front of the camera. Regarding this topic, Gu Xingzi did not delve too much into it. He changed the topic. Sure, can we meet? As if he was afraid that she would reject him, he smiled and said, this is probably the last time we'll see each other. What do you mean? He said, my flight is at 1 in the morning. After tonight, I will return to America and never come back. Although she was mentally prepared, when she heard Gu Xingzi say that he would never come back, she felt a little suffocated. Sure. Gu Xingzi took a deep breath. I want to see you. Even if we don't say anything, I want to see you for the last time. Yun Shirshir also took a deep breath. She looked up at the starry sky and asked, where are you? I'm at the office. I just signed a bunch of agreements. Gu Xingzi said again, where are you? Tell me, I'll go and find you. I'm in the city center now. But there are too many people here. It's not convenient for you, right? With Gu Xingzi's national recognition, even if he was fully armed, he would be recognized in a matter of minutes if he walked on the streets. Yun Shirshir tried to get his opinion. Do you know the park at Huxin Island? Yes. Are you driving? Yes, I'll drive. I'll wait for you at the car park at Huxin Island. Okay. After hanging up the phone, Yun Shirshir immediately walked to the side of the street and flagged down a car. A taxi stopped beside her and she immediately got in. The driver glanced at her and stepped on the accelerator. Then, he realized what was going on and suddenly slammed on the brakes. What's wrong? Yun Shirshir turned pale with fright. She was startled by the sudden braking. You are that, the driver thought hard for a while. The TV drama that my wife has been following recently is called Lethal Beauty. You're the second female lead in it, right? It's that bad woman. My wife hated you at first. But after watching some of your variety shows, I fell in love with you again. Looking at her up close, she really is a beautiful lady. Yun Shirshir smiled awkwardly. I didn't expect my luck to be so good today. I picked up a superstar. Superstar, can I have your autograph? Okay, but you have to drive me to my destination first. The driver was so excited that he didn't even turn on the meter and just slammed on the accelerator. Along the way, the traffic lights were congested. The driver suddenly glanced at the rear mirror and made a tisk sound. The Lexus has been following us all the way. Maybe it's a coincidence. Yun Shirshir said casually. The driver said half-jokingly, could it be the paparazzi? Why are there so many paparazzi following us every day? Yun Shirshir didn't think much of it. Chapter 2861. However, when time came to a standstill, countless thoughts rushed into her mind. Yun Shirshir could not help but recall everything that had happened between her and Gu Xingzi. Scenes flashed before her eyes like a merry-go-round. Unknowingly, her eyes turned red. He said that he was going to America and would not be coming back. In other words, tonight would be the last time they met. She actually felt a little reluctant to part with him. Just as she was lost in her thoughts, her phone rang again. She picked up her phone, thinking that it was a call from Gu Xingzi. Unexpectedly, it was a video call from Xianxia. Yun Shirshir was stunned. Looking at the time, it was already late. Why would he call at this hour? On second thought, due to the time difference, it was probably still daytime over at Xiaojia's place. Perhaps something had happened. She picked up the video call. On the other end, Xiaojia's handsome face was reflected on the screen. However, his expression was very serious and even a little nervous. Xiaojia, what's wrong? Why do you look so nervous? Xianxia did not bother with pleasantries and went straight to the point. Sis, uncle can speak now. What? Yun Shirshir turned pale with fright and stood up abruptly. You're saying that dad can speak now? Yes. Xianxia was also greatly encouraged, but he still frowned. I told him that it wasn't easy for him to recover the function of his vocal cords. He must pay attention to his recuperation, but he insisted on talking to you. No. Yun Shirshir was resolute. He can't speak immediately after recovering the function of his vocal cords. Let him recover completely first before we talk about it. I advised him that too, but he didn't listen at all. Xianxia said solemnly, Sis, You should talk to him. Perhaps your words will be more persuasive. All right, let me see him. Yun Shishir also missed him. Gong Jie froze the video call. Then, he got someone to carry Yun Yeqing into a wheelchair and pushed it over. As soon as Yun Yeqing's figure was reflected on the screen, Gong Jie gently said a few words to him. Yun Yeqing immediately understood and looked at the phone. Knowing that the other side of the phone was his beloved daughter, he opened his mouth to speak in an unbelievably hoarse voice. Shishir, Daddy has caused you to suffer. Dad? Yun Shishir furrowed her brows as tears welled up in her eyes. She quickly said, Dad, don't talk so much. It wasn't easy for you to recover the function. Be careful of your sister. Yun Yeqing ignored her advice and squeezed out these words with much difficulty while holding onto the wheelchair. Yun Shishir was completely stunned. Sister? Yun. His voice was as rough and broken as gravel, but even though he was speaking with great difficulty, she still understood what he was trying to convey. Yuna, she's not dead? Dad, how did you know? Sir. Yun Yeqing seemed to have prepared a script as he said agitatedly, It was her who destroyed me with sulfuric acid. She will definitely look for you. You must be careful. Yun Shishir's face instantly turned ghastly pale as her lips trembled. How is that possible? How could she do such a cruel thing to you? Chapter 2862. Just as she finished speaking, she suddenly felt a car slowly approaching from behind. The ground beneath her feet was instantly illuminated by the high-beam headlights, turning it as bright as a white carpet. The low rumble of the car's engine rose and fell continuously. Yun Shishir's heart skipped a beat. She turned around stiffly and saw a black Lexus parked quietly not far away. The car's high-beam headlights were extremely dazzling. The light suddenly changed, and in an instant, her eyes were as bright as the aurora. Yun Shishir could not open her eyes because of the blinding light. She could not help but raise her hand to shield her eyes. She subconsciously staggered backward, only to see the car release its brakes and step on the accelerator, speeding toward her. Yun Shishir hurriedly retreated and wanted to avoid it. Suddenly, a man's steady voice came from behind. Shishir, be careful. Immediately after, a figure pounced on her. It was Gu Xingzi. When he pounced on her, he did not forget to use his arms to protect her. Hence, even when the two of them fell to the ground, she fell into his arms and did not collide directly with the ground because of his protection. Her phone, however, did not escape being crushed by the car's wheels and was directly crushed. The car brushed past the two of them and stopped very quickly. Immediately after, a woman got out of the car. Yun Shishir turned around abruptly and saw that the woman was wearing a simple outfit that was as black as ink. However, under her short hair, her face was extremely ugly and covered with hideous scars. Even so, Yun Shishir could still recognize her at a glance. Based on her facial features, this woman was Yun Na. It turned out that she was in the Lexus that had been following her all this while. Yun Shishir shuddered at the thought of this. She then thought of Yun Yeqing's words earlier. Yun Na is not dead. She destroyed me with sulfuric acid. Yun Shishir reacted to everything at once. She raised her head abruptly and glared fiercely at her, crying with every word. Yun Na, it's you. You're the one who harmed Dad. Shut up. Yun Na said coldly, He's not my dad. I'm not Yun Na too. You, Yun Shishir, tonight is the day you die. Yun Na didn't make any long-winded speech. Her goal was very simple. Kill her and Yun Shishir. Then, more than half of her hatred would be satisfied. She originally wanted to find that child to avenge her humiliation. After all, that child called Yu was the real culprit who had harmed her. But on second thought, compared to killing a person, making that person lose the person they loved the most was the cruelest punishment. If Yu lost his mother, wouldn't that be hell on earth? With this thought in mind, Yun Na decided to get rid of Yun Shishir. As for Gu Xingzi, since he had interfered, then he would be dealt with as well. Yun Na suddenly took out a gun and loaded it skillfully. She raised her hand and aimed the black muzzle at her. There was no need to be sloppy when it came to killing people, and there was no need for so much nonsense. She would not give Xianxia any chance to escape. She would not give this man a chance to breathe either. Fast, accurate, and ruthless. Kill them all. Xianxia sneered. The cold muzzle was aimed at her glabella. The moment she pulled the trigger, Xianxia reacted faster than her. He pushed Xianxia away abruptly and rolled on the ground himself. The bullets hit the ground, sending sparks flying and smoke curling up. Chapter 2863. Xianxia wanted to aim at him again, but Xianxia suddenly bounced up from the ground and rushed toward her without hesitation. With a beautiful roundhouse kick, he sent the pistol in her hand flying far away. Ah! Xianxia groaned in pain. She immediately hugged her wrist, her face contorted in pain. It hurts. Xianxia's roundhouse kick had broken her wrist. She gripped her wrist tightly. When she looked up again, her eyes were already bloodshot. Every single one of you is protecting her. Are you all her dogs? Is there a need to be so loyal? Even if you have to die for her, are you not afraid? Xianxia gritted her teeth. From the corner of her eye, she saw another person getting out of the car. She immediately turned her head and saw a man in black suddenly crouching down and walking quickly toward Xianxia. Xianxia wasn't the only one here. Xianxia wasn't the only one in the car. There were others. Oh no. Xianxia immediately blurted out, "Xianxia, be careful." Xianxia heard her shout and was a little distracted. When he turned around, Xianxia immediately pulled out a sharp dagger from her waist. She pulled it out of the scabbard, held the handle tightly, and stabbed him viciously in the back. "I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you." Xianxia was caught off guard and was stabbed by the dagger. He immediately arched his body. From the corner of his eye, he saw another man in black immediately walk over. He reached out and quietly grabbed his throat, dragged him to the side, and punched him hard in the chest. Cough. Xianxia was numb from the pain from this punch. He frowned and the veins on his forehead popped out. The man quickly restrained him, grabbed him by the throat, and pinned him high against the wall. Xianxia rushed over without thinking. Holding the dagger, she ruthlessly stabbed him in the abdomen again. No, no. Xianxia was so frightened by this cruel scene that she was speechless. Her mind went blank, but she forced herself to regain her senses. From the corner of her eye, she suddenly saw the pistol that had been kicked aside by Xianxia. She hurriedly crawled over and held the pistol tightly with trembling hands. She had never held a pistol before, so she didn't know how to use the heavy metal object in her hand. What to do? What to do? Xianxia was so anxious that her face turned pale, and her forehead was covered with cold sweat. At that moment, Xianxia stabbed him again. When she suddenly pulled out the dagger, it was dripping with blood. Stop! Xianxia screamed and rushed over. She clumsily aimed the gun at the man's feet and pulled the trigger. Because Xianxia had already loaded the gun, the bullet flew out quickly. In the blink of an eye, the bullet hit the man's leg. The man staggered and knelt on one knee. Bang! Bang! She fired 2 more shots at his back. Xianxia saw that she had a gun in her hand and was about to rush toward her. "Xianxia, I'll kill you. Go to hell for me." Seeing her rush over, Xianxia trembled and held the gun tightly. She broke down and said, "You're the one who should go to hell." Bang! Bang! The bullet shot through Xianxia's other intact wrist and penetrated her flesh. The other bullet lost its center of gravity and made a hole in the wall. Xianxia's dagger fell to the ground. Xianxia, she couldn't believe it. She didn't expect that Xianxia could hit the target on her first try. Chapter 2864. She had practiced for a long time to learn how to use a pistol. Xianxia was in so much pain that she could no longer move her hands. Like a walking corpse, she rushed toward her and slammed her to the ground. Xianxia wanted to pull the trigger again, but she realized that there were no more bullets. This pistol only had 6 bullets. She was shocked and panicked. Xianxia was on top of her. Because she was angry from embarrassment, she opened her mouth and bit down hard on her shoulder like a mad dog. Xianxia groaned in pain and broke out in a cold sweat. She suddenly reached out and strangled Xianxia's neck. She was on the verge of losing her mind. She did not care about those so-called scruples and used her fingers to crush Yun Na's eyeballs. Because of the enormous pain, Yun Na let out a shrill cry hysterically, and she actually rolled over to the side. She was too anxious. She was too anxious to get rid of Yun Shirshir. Instead, she was flustered because of this. Yun Shirshir immediately got up from the ground and pounced on her again. She used her hands to strangle her ruthlessly. Angry and desperate, she shouted at the top of her lungs, "Yun Na! Why are you so cruel?" Yun Na was choked until she could not breathe. Her entire head was red because of the lack of oxygen in her brain. Her eyes bulged and her veins popped out. Yun Shirshir gritted her teeth and said, "I hate you. I hate you. You're the one who destroyed this family. You deserve to die. The one who deserves to die is not me. It's you. You're the one who caused Dad to be like that. He's your biological father. How can you treat him so cruelly?" "He's not." Yun Na screamed in despair. "He's not my father. He's not. Yun Shirshir, you took away everything that belonged to me. Even if I go to hell one day, I want you to be buried with me." When Yun Shirshir thought of Yun Yeqing's miserable state, she hated this detestable and evil woman even more. She tightened her grip on Yun Na's throat and exerted more force. She wanted to kill her. Even if she was sentenced to break the law, she would not hesitate. This woman is crazy. If he didn't kill her, she would kill him and Xianxia. She absolutely couldn't tolerate her hurting Xianxia again. Yun Shirshir and Yun Na were in a fierce confrontation. Behind them, the man in black finally got up from the ground. He had been shot in the knee, and one of his legs had lost its support. However, when he saw that Yun Na was at a disadvantage, he immediately turned around and returned to the car. He opened the trunk and took out a silver handgun. The man turned around. Under the moonlight, the gun glinted coldly and attracted Gu Xing's attention. It was a gun. He followed the man's gaze and realized that he was closing in on Yun Shirshir. He gradually raised his right hand, swiftly loaded the gun, and put his index finger on the trigger. Without a second thought, Gu Xingzi ignored the blood flowing out of his abdomen and back. Just as the man raised his gun and pulled the trigger, Gu Xingzi pounced on him. Ugh! The man was caught off guard and was pushed to the ground by Gu Xingzi. However, the trigger had already been pulled, but the bullet's trajectory suddenly deviated. Originally, if the shot had not deviated, the bullet should have pierced through the back of Yun Shirshir's head. However, because of Gu Xingzi's interference, the bullet hit the car window beside Yun Shirshir. Bang! A loud sound was heard. The car alarm sounded. Chapter 2865. The glass shattered. The flying glass cut her cheeks and exposed her skin. Finally, the glass shards pierced Yun Shirshir's eyes. The eyes were the weakest part of a human being. When the glass shards pierced her eyes, the piercing pain made her cry out in pain. Because of the sharp object piercing her eyes, Yun Shirshir felt a piercing pain in her eyes. Her whole body fell backward. Her eyes hurt. After the whole world spun around, her head hit the concrete floor heavily. Her eyes were shaking from the pain. Then, she seemed to feel the glass from the car window falling on her body. Shirshir. She seemed to hear Gu Xingzi calling her name. But she couldn't hear what he was shouting. The pain seemed to have taken over all her consciousness. So painful, her eyes hurt. Yun Shirshir panicked. She touched her eyelids with trembling hands. Her fingertips touched a patch of warm blood that stained her eyelashes. It flowed down her cheeks and stained her clothes. She endured the searing pain and opened her eyes a little. Her vision was blurred by blood, as if covered by a layer of red fog. It was so hazy that she couldn't see anything. She could only vaguely distinguish the glaring light. I can't see anything," Yun Shirshir choked with sobs. Gu Xingzi frowned and gritted his teeth. He grabbed the dagger from the ground with difficulty. The man behind him wanted to get up and make a final struggle. However, Gu Xingzi didn't give him the chance to do so. The dagger pierced into his chest. That was where his heart was. Gu Xingzi knew very well that this dagger had pierced into his chest. He didn't want to get up. The man's eyes widened in disbelief as he was stabbed in the chest. His face instantly became distorted as he looked at the man covered in blood in disbelief. He had been stabbed so many times, but he still had so much strength. To actually stab the dagger so deeply. The man immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. This slash was almost destructive. His entire body collapsed on the third floor. His eyes were wide open in anger and he no longer struggled. Xianxia stood up and staggered over to Xianxia's side to help her up. However, when he exerted a little force, it affected the location of the wound, and blood gushed out again. Xianxia shrieked in fright when she felt someone touching her. Xianxia immediately coaxed her gently, "Xianxia, don't be afraid." "It's me, Xianxia." He held back the sweet taste in his throat and glanced at Yunna, who was unconscious on the ground. He said to her, "Let's go to the hospital." Before he could finish his words, his legs went soft and he almost fell to his knees. When Xianxia heard his voice, she endured the pain and groped around aimlessly. Finally, she found his hand. She immediately grasped his hand tightly. "Xianxia, how are you? Are you seriously injured? Did you lose a lot of blood?" "No." Xianxia endured the pain and gritted his teeth. He pretended to smile calmly and said, "I'm fine." Xianxia didn't believe him. She rubbed his body, but he held her hand instead. "Your eyes are injured. Let's go to the hospital, okay?" "Okay." Xianxia touched her face in pain. When she touched the sticky blood, she became even more flustered. She couldn't see anything. Chapter 2866. Seeing that she was flustered, Xianxia hugged her gently to calm her down. "Don't be afraid. Everything will be fine," he said calmly. "Everything will be fine, okay? Don't be afraid." The two of them stood up while leaning against each other. Xianxia couldn't see and had lost her sense of direction. She could only use all her strength to put Xianxia's arm on her shoulders and try her best to support all his weight. Xianxia hugged her shoulders. He knew deep down that this idiot must have wanted to use his body to support her. However, she was also severely injured. He couldn't bear to let her bear all his weight. He really couldn't bear to let her bear all his weight. Hence, he shifted his weight to the other side. He hugged her with one hand and covered his bleeding wound with the other. He slowly walked towards the intersection. Xianxia couldn't see. Because she couldn't see how pale his face was at this moment. His face was pale and covered in cold sweat. Especially his originally rosy lips. They had lost all color due to excessive blood loss. And because she couldn't see at all how gentle Xianxia's gaze was on her at this moment. It was a gentleness that was engraved in his bones. If he could, he wanted to look at her as much as possible. He wanted to imprint her features deeply into his bones and blood. If he could, he wanted time to stop right here and now. He wanted to look at her quietly until he got tired of looking at her. If he could, he wanted to go back to the day when they first met. He would definitely hug her tightly in his arms. When that man appeared, he would take over her entire heart. Xianxia's lips suddenly trembled. Looking at Xianxia's side profile as she endured the pain, he couldn't bear to let her go just like that. For a moment, his eyes were filled with tears and they were red. "Xianxia, before I came, I thought of countless parting words." Xianxia tried his best to widen his eyes and force back his tears. His Adam's apple bobbed, and the corners of his lips curled up. He smiled and said, "I want to wish you happiness. I wish you happiness forever, but I selfishly think that I might not be able to be generous to wish you happiness." Xianxia's expression suddenly froze. "How I wish that you couldn't live without me. Xianxia, I like you." Xianxia endured the pain and his voice was as soft as the wind. "I really like you." He tried his best to force a smile. "I love it so much." This was the first time in his life that he loved someone so deeply. He couldn't accept this. For the first time in his life, he wanted to obtain someone, but after exhausting everything he still couldn't obtain her. However, no matter how unwilling he was, "I still want you to be happy." Xianxia muttered, Sure, do you know? I want to be generous and wish you happiness, But I also selfishly hope that you'll never be happy for me. But if you're lonely, I can't bear it. Xianxia suddenly felt the weight on one of her shoulders collapse. Her shoulder was suddenly empty, and she heard a heavy sound. It was the sound of someone falling to the ground. Xianxia. Xianxia was so scared that she cried, Xianxia, where are you? Chapter 2867. Xianxia, where are you? She immediately squatted down and desperately searched until she found an arm. She crawled over along the arm and hugged Xianxia in her arms with heartache. Tears kept flowing from her eyes and dripped onto his body along with blood. Xianxia, don't scare me, don't scare me. She was so shocked that she was flustered. It was as if the whole world had collapsed. She shouldn't have accepted his appointment. She should have rejected him cruelly. That way, even if he was disappointed, he could have safely boarded the plane to America and not ended up like this. She was wrong. Oh God. She knew she was wrong. She really knew she was wrong. Could she rewind time? Could she rewind time? She didn't want anything to happen to him. Sure. Xianxia's breathing suddenly quickened. He opened his eyes and looked up at her. Seeing her crying, his heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife. Don't cry, Xianxia, don't scare me, it's okay. Xianxia smiled gently and coaxed her softly, I don't care about life and death anymore. He had depression, so he didn't care about death. From the beginning to the end, he had locked himself in his own world. The only light he saw was her, but he didn't hold on to it firmly. In this world, the only thing he couldn't care less about was her tears. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. Xianxia cried bitterly. Let's exchange, okay? I'll exchange my life for yours. Please don't die. You can't die. Don't leave me so cruelly. Will you forget me? Xianxia asked with difficulty. When Xianxia heard this, tears welled up in her eyes. He continued to ask stubbornly, if I die, will you remember me for a second? Xianxia was very sad and deliberately provoked him. If you die, I'll definitely forget you. The more I forget, the better. So, when Xianxia heard this, he laughed softly and interrupted her. Yes, that would be best. Xianxia was stunned. When Xianxia heard that she was going to forget about him, there was a sense of loss and comfort in his eyes. He was disappointed because she said that she wanted to forget about him. Comforting like this, what was left for her was not those painful memories. I also don't want to leave you with sad memories. Xianxia's eyelids became heavier and heavier. His face lost all its luster and became extremely gloomy, but he still tried to smile. Forget me. It would be best. His eyelashes gradually drooped. His fair hand suddenly slipped from her palm and hung limply to the side. The air suddenly became deathly still. In his ears, it was as if the line of death had been drawn. She could no longer hear any sound, and she could no longer feel any warmth or undulations from his body. She could only feel that his body was gradually losing its warmth, and it was becoming increasingly cold. Xianxia? She forced a smile and gently touched his cold face, trying her best to pull the corner of his lips. Xianxia, can you talk to me? I want to talk to you. I'm scared. I'm really scared, liar. Xianxia furrowed her eyebrows. Didn't you say that with you around, I don't need to be afraid? But why did you leave me behind? Xianxia did not react at all, let alone make a sound. Chapter 2868. Xianxia did not react at all. His eyelids were slightly closed, and his expression was calm. However, he was like an empty shell, so empty that there was no trace of life. No, she finally began to panic. She groped around and held his face, pressing her forehead against his cheek. However, she could only feel his cold temperature. I beg you, don't leave me, she begged in despair. Using all her strength, she hugged his shoulders tightly, trying to transfer all her body temperature to him. Xianxia, I was lying to you just now. Xianxia said in pain, I was lying to you. I wanted you to live well. I was lying to you. I won't forget you. How could I bear to forget you? Memories flashed through her mind like a revolving lantern. When they first met, he smiled and sized her up. His beautiful eyes were slightly curved, and a warm smile appeared on his face. "You're so clean and beautiful. Why did you become the assistant of a small-time model? How useless. You're much prettier than her. If you enter the entertainment industry, you'll definitely be popular. Your temperament is just right for the female lead in my heart." Xianxia could no longer hold back her heart-wrenching sadness. She burst into tears and hugged his cold body in a sorry state, crying like a desperate child. I like you so much. I like you so much." Gu Xing's smile was still vivid in her mind. At Huan Yu's annual cocktail party, he led her to the dance floor. He was dressed in a suit. He leaned over slightly to her and made an inviting gesture, like an elegant and noble gentleman. "May I have a dance with you?" He smiled. His teeth were pure white and extremely charming. Life felt like the first time they met. Xianxia gritted her teeth and hugged his head that had no center of gravity. Tears gushed out like a fountain. She tried her best to open her eyes wide, wanting to take a good look at him. However, the wider her eyes were, the deeper the pain. In the end, all she could see was a blood-red blur. She could not see anything clearly. "No," Xianxia cried helplessly. "Let me take a good look at you." "Xianxia, let me take a good look at you. I can't see anything." Xianxia grabbed his collar tightly. The pain was so great that her soul was about to shatter. "Xianxia." She called his name in despair, and her cries echoing in the huge parking lot. "Xia?" In the darkness, a tall figure walked towards her. Xianxia opened her eyes abruptly, only to see the superstar's gentle smile. "Xianxia." She was excited and hugged him. "You're not dead. You're not dead." She was so happy that her words were all jumbled up. She only knew how to repeat the same sentence. Her heart ached as she hugged him tightly. I think I Xianxia, I really think you leave, I really think I shui." Xia's tears flowed uncontrollably. "Don't make such jokes again. You leave me, you leave." Sure. Gu Xingza calmed her down. His warm hand gently caressed her hair. He smiled and said, "I'm leaving." "You're leaving?" "Yes." "Where are you going?" "To a place very far away." Gu Xingza's tone was relaxed. This is probably a form of relief. To him, the pain of living and falling into darkness forever was a form of relief. Chapter 2869. Meeting you is the luckiest thing in my life. But meeting you has already exhausted all my luck. Gu Xingza smiled faintly. But I don't regret it. Gu Xingza suddenly turned around and looked back with a smile. "I'm leaving." "No." Xianxia immediately got up and chased after him desperately. "Don't go." However, Gu Xingza seemed to not hear her voice. His back view gradually disappeared from her sight. She used all her strength to chase after him, but no matter how hard she tried, she could not catch up with him. Xianxia woke up in the darkness and opened her eyes wide. Through her blurry vision, she could vaguely feel a strong light shining down from the top of her head. It's okay. The surroundings were noisy, and the voices of people were clamoring. 2 people carefully carried her onto the stretcher. Be careful of her hand, don't crush it." In the middle of the night, the flashing lights of the police cars and ambulances were dazzling. In the long corridor of the hospital, the cold lights flashed past. The doctors and nurses were anxiously pushing the ambulance bed to the operating theater without stopping for a moment. Xianxia lay on the operating table with her eyes tightly closed. The piercing pain almost made her suffocate. She could vaguely make out the dejected cries of a family member among the chaotic voices around her. Then, in her daze, she heard a familiar voice. "Sure? It was him." It hurts. She could not see anything. She reached out and was quickly held tightly by a pair of big hands. Mu Yaja pretended to be calm and called her name softly. Sure, it's me." Before he could finish speaking, the nurse pushed him aside. "Sorry, sir, please wait outside the operating theater." After that, A group of medical staff hurriedly pushed Xianxia into the operating room. Wuxia stood at the entrance of the operating theater. Behind him, Hua Jin rushed over with Yu Yu in his arms. Xiao Yichen ran the fastest. He rushed to the entrance of the operating theater and raised his head. When he saw the operating theater light on, he gasped. "Mommy!" He walked to the door in a panic and peeked through the crack. Hua Jin immediately asked, "Brother-in-law, what happened to elder sister?" "We still don't know what's going on." "Sister?" Her eyes were injured. "I've already sent someone to investigate the details." Previously he had sent bodyguards for her, but according to the news, she had followed the crew to the TV station for an event, and then the crew was responsible for sending her home. Hence, they did not follow her. Furthermore, nothing unexpected had happened all this while. They let down their guard a little. Xianxia also said that there was nothing special, so they didn't follow her anymore. Thus, they were on standby. "Excuse me, are you the victim's family member?" The doctor's trembling voice came from the emergency room not far away. Wuxia turned around and saw Gu Jinglian standing at the door of the emergency room. His expression was gloomy and his aura was terrifying. In the middle of the night, he had received a call saying that Gu Xianxia was in trouble. He rushed over. Along the way, he felt that it was inconceivable. Trouble? How could it be? Didn't he go out for something? Chapter 2870. He said that he would not come back after returning to America. Gu Xianxia had wanted to send him off, but he said that he wanted to see the most important person in his final moments. Then he disappeared without a trace. Gu Xianxia did not expect to receive such news in the middle of the night when he waited for his return. He rushed to the hospital and arrived at the emergency room. The doctor asked him if he was the victim's family member. "The victim?" Gu Jinglian's face darkened. "Where is he?" "He's in the emergency room. We've already tried to resuscitate him, but he lost his vital signs on the way. There's nothing we can do to save him," the doctor said regretfully. Gu Jinglian did not believe him. "How is that possible? Quack, could you have made a mistake?" The doctor felt wronged. "Even so," he explained in a low voice, "how could I have made a mistake? The victim was a very popular celebrity when he was alive. He was a popular idol. You didn't see how the nurses in the emergency room were crying so hard." Gu Xianxia had lost all signs of life on the way to the hospital. Some of the medical staff recognized him in the ambulance. This nurse happened to be Gu Xianxia's fan. When she saw this scene, she was stunned as if she had been struck by lightning. It was unbelievable. The idol who had announced to the public that he was quitting the entertainment industry just a day ago was now a cold body. When Gu Xianxia was sent to the emergency room, many nurses swarmed over. "Oh my God! Oh my God! Isn't this Xianxia? My eyes must be playing tricks on me. Or maybe, am I dreaming?" The emergency room was filled with cries. No one could believe that Gu Xianxia was dead. She left this world coldly and desolately. But the most heart-wrenching thing was not his departure. It was when the doctor announced that the resuscitation was futile. When the nurses cleaned his wounds, they found that he was covered in wounds and blood. Not only did he leave alone, but he also left in great pain. Even if they weren't Gu Xianxia's fans, their eyes turned red from sadness at such a bleak scene. "Get out of my way." Gu Jinglian lost his patience and pushed him away. He kicked the door open and barged in. The door was kicked wide open. Gu Jinglian walked in and was surprised to find a body covered tightly by a white cloth on a hospital bed in the emergency room. The nurses hugged each other and burst into tears. Gu Jinglian could not help but feel annoyed. He shouted angrily, "Get out of here!" A few nurses were shocked by his angry and cold expression. Under the doctor's eye signal, they left the room in groups. In the spacious resuscitation room, there was only a lonely bed left. All kinds of medical instruments were piled up at the side. At the foot of the bed, there were many blood-stained and cut clothes. Gu Jinglian walked over to the bed. He did not believe that the person under the white cloth was Gu Xianxia. He could not help but reach out, pinch a corner of the white bedsheet, and lift it up. Wow! Gu Xianxia's pale and handsome face came into view. Gu Jinglian's eyes widened slightly. He lost focus for a moment and his pupils contracted. He was so shocked by this scene that his heart stopped beating for a moment. Xianxia, was he really dead? He was in disbelief. Chapter 2871. Uncle Fu also walked over. When he saw Gu Xianxia on the bed, his eyes instantly turned red. What happened? He was fine. Why did he? It wasn't that he didn't have feelings for Gu Xianxia. Uncle Fu had served Gu Lianqing wholeheartedly in the Gu family. After Gu Lianqing passed away, he started serving Gu Jinglian. However, his heart was incomparably gentle. His heart ached for Gu Xianxia and he pitied him. Gu Xianxia had lived in the Gu family for a period of time. At that time, only Uncle Fu could get close to him. Since he was young, Xianxia's personality had been more introverted. He rarely interacted with outsiders and always sealed himself in his own world. He liked to hide in the study room and read quietly or flip through comics. The only person who could communicate with him was probably Uncle Fu. From the beginning to the end, very few people could enter his heart. Once they entered, they couldn't leave. He was obsessed with love. In Uncle Fu's eyes, although this child looked cold, he valued love more than his life. He looked at Gu Xianxia's pale face and couldn't help but cry. He quickly wiped it away with his hand. Young Master Xianxia, how could this be? Wuxia also walked into the emergency room. He had only planned to wait outside the operating theater for his wife. When he found out about this, he rushed over but only saw Yun Shirshir lying on the operating table, covered in blood. He didn't know if the blood on her clothes was hers or someone else's. Especially her eyes, which were filled with blood. When he saw it, his heart felt like it was being stabbed. What was the feeling of heartache? He wished he could take the pain for her. The eyes were the most vulnerable part of a person. The doctor said that there were many small glass shards in her eyes, which caused the corneal hemorrhage. Glass shards. How did these damned things get into her eyes? Wuxia really couldn't figure it out, but he didn't have time to investigate. He only cared about accompanying her by the bed. At that time, she was unconscious, but she kept mumbling as if she was talking nonsense. He leaned closer to listen, but he couldn't hear clearly. When she finally woke up and opened her eyes, she was pushed into the operating theater. Wuxia could only force himself to calm down. If he lost his composure, the situation would be completely out of control. Right now, he had to guard her until she left the operating theater safely. He didn't care about her eyes or whether she would lose her vision. He only wanted her to live well. Even if she could no longer see, he would do everything in his power to make her see again. However, Wuxia saw Uncle Fu's eyebrows. But when he heard him, he heard Uncle Fu's sorrowful voice. "Young master." His eyebrows twitched, and he vaguely suspected something, so he walked to the resuscitation room. However, he saw such a desolate scene. Gu Xianxia lay on the hospital bed with a pale face. To be precise, this was an empty shell without any soul control. It was cold without any temperature. His body was already cold. His limbs were also gradually stiffening. His handsome face was stained with blood, but it was strangely calm. It was as if he had just fallen asleep. Normally, after suffering so many injuries, an ordinary person's expression would be extremely ferocious before they died. However, he was exceptionally gentle and quiet, as if he had left without any pain. Chapter 2872. He had never thought that the two of them would meet under such circumstances. Gu Jinglian sized him up and asked expressionlessly, "Why are you here?" "What happened to him?" Wuxia asked instead of answering. Gu Jinglian lowered his gaze and glanced at Gu Xianxia. His expression was covered with a layer of ice. "He's dead." He left peacefully. He had originally thought that he would not be affected by any accident that Gu Xianxia had caused. However, he did not expect that when this family member left, Gu Jinglian's heart would still ache a little. Gu Xianxia was dead. His heart was heavy. Gu Jinglian suddenly narrowed his eyes. "Who did it?" "Old master, who did it?" Gu Jinglian gripped the armrest tightly, his gaze vicious. "Who did it?" Uncle Fu immediately said, "I just understood the situation. It's said that the culprit has already been detained. It's a woman." The other accomplice was already dead when he went to the crime scene because of a fatal wound. A woman? Gu Jinglian frowned. A woman? A woman? Mu Yaja also expressed his doubts. Uncle Fu immediately said, "It said that before young Master Xianxia went abroad, he wanted to see Miss Yun Shishir one last time. He was probably attacked on the way to the appointment." "Did he offend any enemies?" Gu Jinglian's expression turned even colder. "I remember that he didn't offend anyone. How could he be attacked for no reason? All these need to be carefully investigated by the police before they can come to a conclusion. I've already sent people to put pressure on the relevant departments. I believe that they will be able to come to a conclusion soon." Mu Yaja frowned and suddenly asked, "Did you find out the woman's name?" When Uncle Fu heard this, he and Gu Jinglian turned to look at him. After struggling for a while, he said slowly, "I only know that it was a young woman with a slightly damaged face. Her surname is Yun and her name is Na. That's all I know." Mu Yaja was stunned, and the muscles on his face tightened. "Yun Na? It was actually this woman." He narrowed his eyes and guessed what was going on. Bang! A loud sound was heard. The door of the resuscitation room opened wide. Hua Jin was startled by the sudden movement. He stood up immediately, only to see Mu Yaja walk out with a stern expression. He strode in front of him and instructed, "Stay here and guard her well." "What happened to you? You look like you're in a hurry. Where are you going?" Hua Jin was a little confused. Mu Yaja said, "I have something very important to deal with." "What?" Before he could finish his question, Mu Yaja didn't have time to say much to him. He only instructed him to guard the resuscitation room and take care of Yun Shishir first. Then, he turned and left in a hurry. A number of police cars were parked at the entrance of the hospital. After escorting the injured and taking their statements, the police officers were about to return home. Mu Yaja followed them closely in his car until the police car entered the police station. He parked his car and rushed into the office hall. At a glance, he saw Yun Na, whose hands were handcuffed. Chapter 2873. Mu Yaja did not recognize her at first glance, but he inadvertently discovered the hideous and terrifying scars on her face. He vaguely remembered hearing Yu and Shishir mention that Yun Na's face was cruelly disfigured by Lu Jingtian because she had offended her. She used an eyebrow shaver. Her face was cut until it was dripping with blood. Mu Yaja furrowed his brows and walked closer to her. Yun Na was trembling all over. She lowered her head and mumbled incoherently as if she was possessed. He did not know what she was mumbling about. Mu Yaja's handsome brows sank slightly. He did not know what exactly had happened. By the time he arrived at the hospital, Yun Shishir and Gu Xianxia had already lost their lives on the way to the hospital. One was blinded, while the other had lost his life on the way to the hospital. What exactly had happened? He did not know. However, he could vaguely guess that it had something to do with Yun Na. Mu Yaja's face was dark and furious. He did not know that Yun Na was still alive, nor did he know that Yun Yecheng's accident had something to do with her. He also did not know that Lu Jingtian's burns were caused by Yun Na. She had returned from hell like a malicious spirit, seeking revenge. After the 3 police officers in charge of this case registered the case, they walked over with the records. When they saw Mu Yaja standing at the side, they were stunned for a moment. Clearly, they did not know who he was. "What are you doing?" The officer in charge was the first to ask. Mu Yaja glanced at him and then said coldly, "I'm the victim's family member." "The victim's family member?" The officer glanced at him and then at Yun Na. He suddenly reacted. "You're Yun Shishir's family member?" "Yes." "Who are you to her? What's your identity?" "Husband." "Zhang." The police officer was stunned. Naturally, they were no stranger to Yun Shishir. The movie that she starred in broke box office records, and the TV series that she starred in had a rising viewership rating. The public now knew that her husband was the former chief of the Mu Group and the founder of the Xinyu Financial Group, Mu Yaja, after the catfight between her and Ji Yen had caused a huge uproar in the city. Therefore, when they heard that he was Yun Shishir's husband, they immediately knew the man's prominent identity, and their attitude immediately became respectful. So, It's President Mu. The three police officers looked at each other and smiled awkwardly. Mu Yaja glanced at Yun Na once more, and he noticed her eyes were staring fixedly at a certain spot as if she was in a world that she'd sealed off. Her body was swaying back and forth, and her expression was dull while she ceaselessly muttered something. What is she talking about? Hearing his question, one of the police officers immediately smiled and said, "Please wait a moment, I'll go over and listen." Another police captain immediately stopped him. "Don't go, be careful not to get caught by her." He didn't know if this woman was really crazy or just pretending to be crazy. On the way back to the police station, she was so paranoid, as if she was possessed. Could it be that she's mentally ill? If she's mentally ill, we'll have to test her. Mu Yaja immediately glanced at him coldly, and the man immediately stopped talking. "President Mu, do you have any instructions for us?" Mu Yaja sized up Yun Na with a gloomy look, and then ordered, "Go through the bail procedure for me." This, bail? Chapter 2874. The three of them were well aware of the situation. If Mu Yaja wanted to bail someone out, he didn't need to ask for their opinion. However, it was indeed too brazen of him to go through the bail procedure without even interrogating the criminal. "I'll give you 20 minutes to go through the procedure." Mu Yaja glanced at his watch expressionlessly, then looked up and said coldly, "My time is precious." The three of them couldn't help but be deeply shocked by his gaze. They shuddered and looked at each other. At the hospital, the emergency room was crowded with people. News of Gu Xing's accident spread like wildfire among the media, probably due to the hospital's insiders leaking the news. Many media outlets, upon learning that Gu Xingza had met with an accident and his life was in doubt, went to the hospital to wait for him after finding out which hospital he was sent to. Huan Yu also received the news from the Gu family and sent Ji Lin and Qin Zhou to rush over. Qin Zhou was the first to arrive at the hospital and hurriedly entered the morgue. In the huge morgue, there was only one bed. This was a room that the hospital had specially emptied to store Gu Xingza's body. Soon, someone rushed over to take care of Gu Xingza's body. When Qin Zhou arrived, Gu Xingza's clothes had already been removed and the bloodstains on his body had just been wiped clean. However, the wound was still a ghastly sight. Just as he walked to the door, he saw Gu Xingza lying quietly on the bed. He was stunned as if he had been struck by lightning. His mind went blank for a few seconds. Qin Zhou immediately reacted and rushed to the bed in a panic. However, all he saw was Gu Xingza's deathly pale face. "Xingza!" He called out Xingza's name sorrowfully. However, the most frustrating thing was that the man on the bed didn't respond to him anymore. "Xingza!" Qin Zhou's heart sank to the bottom. On the way here, he was burning with anxiety. He only hoped that the news was false. Perhaps in the process of passing on the message had been misinterpreted. How could a person who was alive just a second ago suddenly die for no reason? Qin Zhou was clearly in disbelief. But when she rushed to the hospital and saw Gu Xingza, she was shocked to find that all this was not fake. Xingza really left. Qin Zhou rarely shed tears. His personality had always been more cheerful. Even if something pessimistic happened to him, he wouldn't feel sad. However, after encountering this matter, he suddenly became weak. His eyes immediately turned red, and tears suddenly fell onto the pure white blanket. He wept bitterly. "Xingza, didn't you say you were flying to America? What is this?" He suddenly stretched out his hand and touched the ghastly wounds. Tears streamed down his face. "Where did these wounds come from? Earlier, you said that you would contact me as soon as you arrived in the U.S. I thought you were already sitting in the first-class cabin to the U.S. He immediately hugged Gu Xingza's shoulders. His heart was filled with pain, but he did not know how to vent it. "Quickly get up and tell me that this is a joke. You're joking with me? Okay, you win. I was fooled by you. Xingza, don't close your eyes anymore. Open them and look at me." Chapter 2875. Gu Xingza had been in the entertainment industry for many years. Qin Zhou and he were very close. Their relationship was so close that most people would find it unreasonable. Many media outlets even speculated that the two of them were gay. They said that Qin Zhou and Gu Xingze did not cheat on each other and that their sexual orientation was not normal. However, in fact, it would not be appropriate to use the phrase, close as brothers, to describe the relationship between the two of them. Qin Zhou saw Gu Xingze as family, while Gu Xingze saw him as a lighthouse. If it were not for Qin Zhou's support in his 11 years in the entertainment industry, it would have been difficult for him to reach such a glorious position. However, he was more grateful to Qin Zhou because this man understood him and understood him. He was also the only person who could walk into his heart. Qin Zhou obviously could not accept this reality. He held Gu Xingze's face and pressed his forehead against it. However, he could only feel the coldness from deep within his skin. There was no warmth. He was no longer around, leaving behind such an empty shell. No matter how he called out to him, he would never wake up again. Qin Zhou gripped the bedsheets tightly in pain. He obviously could not accept such bad news. Gu Jinglian stood at the side and watched this scene. His face also softened a little. The separation of life and death was enough to deeply affect anyone with a heart of stone. Ji Lin also arrived quickly. Many of Huan Yu's executives followed closely behind. Ji Lin walked to the door and instructed them to wait at the door before he walked in. When he walked to the bedside and saw the scene, his entire face twitched. What's going on? Qin Zhou looked at him with reddened eyes. His lips could not help but tremble. Ji Lin saw him and frowned. However, he could not bear to reprimand him. He only said, "Pull yourself together. We still need you to follow up on the follow-up matters." Is my most important friend. Over 10 years of friendship is more important than family. Qin Zhou choked. How can I not be sad that he's gone? How can I not be sad? You told me to pull myself together, but how can I pull myself together? Sigh. Ji Lin sighed helplessly. Qin Zhou, there are media outside the door. I've already sent people to seal off the hospital, but I'm afraid it'll be difficult to stop those media. Last time, paparazzi sneaked into Lu Jingtian's morgue to take photos of her body and publish them online. I don't want such a thing to happen to Xianxia. Qin Zhou clenched his fists tightly. The news of Xianxia's death should be announced to the public. This matter has already spread like wildfire among so many people in the hospital. We won't be able to keep it a secret for long. D****. Qin Zhou cursed angrily. Which bastard spread the news? Xianxia is very popular and has a very high national profile. He can cause a commotion on the streets. There are definitely many people who would recognize him, especially nurses, especially those nurses. On my way here, I saw many nurses crowding around the door, looking around with red eyes. I'm afraid they want to come in to pay their respects. Qin Zhou immediately declared, no outsiders are allowed to enter this place. So, I'll need you to settle the rest of the matters. At least don't let's at least, Don. Okay, I understand. Qin Zhou pulled himself together and straightened his body. However, when he looked at Gu Xingze again, the corners of his eyebrows twitched again. He could not bear to see it, but he could not bear to look. He could not bear to. He really could not. Chapter 2876. He wanted to take a few more glances, take a few more good glances, but the more he looked, the sadder he felt. He really couldn't accept such a cruel fact. Was Xianxia really dead? Soon, like those who had died, he would turn into a small pile of ashes in the funeral parlor and be buried in a dark grave, never to see the light of day. Qin Zhou suddenly felt very sad, and he couldn't stop his tears. He wasn't a weak person, but now that he deeply understood that Gu Xingze would never come back, he felt the heart-wrenching pain of losing a close friend. Qin Zhou tried to restrain himself again and again before he forced himself to stand up. He gently reached out to close the superstar's eyes, which had not been tightly shut. Didn't you always say that you wanted to have a good sleep? Qin Zhou looked at him and frowned, but he forced a smile. Now, you can have a good rest. Leave the rest to me. He turned around and slowly walked away. When he reached the door, a few of Huan Yu's executives looked around inside. Qin Zhou stopped them. Don't look. As he spoke, he closed the door behind him. What happened to Xianxia? We received news that Xianxia had an accident. What happened? Qin Zhou glanced at them with a blank gaze and said casually, "Xianxia is asleep. Don't wake him up." The executives looked at each other, obviously not knowing what was going on. However, most of them were smart. When they heard Qin Zhou's words, they roughly confirmed their guesses. Xianxia was gone. He was in a deep sleep forever. He had been in the entertainment industry for 10 years and had always been the most dazzling star. Now, he was really like a shooting star, falling into the galaxy. "Xianxia is asleep. Don't wake him up." He used to complain to Qin Zhou that he couldn't sleep well at night. Qin Zhou knew that his mental state was very poor and was very worried. He knew very well that Xianxia had been in the entertainment industry for more than 11 years. For many years, he was always flying around the world to rush to work, so his sleep condition was very bad. Furthermore, it was accompanied by severe neurasthenia and depression. All along, it had been accompanied by medication. He had announced his retirement from the entertainment industry because of Xianxia. More importantly, his personal doctor had repeatedly advised him to go to America for treatment of his depression. Xianxia also gave up. However, the announcement of his withdrawal from the entertainment industry was too sudden and caught Qin Zhou off guard. Why did he fall in love with Xianxia? It was probably because Xianxia was the only ray of light that could expel the darkness in his heart. However, there were some things that could not be forced. He really couldn't force it. However, he had thought of countless possibilities regarding his future. Perhaps he would be cured of his depression in the United States. Perhaps, in a foreign country, he had met a suitable girl and was in love with her. Perhaps, in 2 years, he would marry the woman he loved, have children, and live a peaceful life. However, no matter how much he thought about his future, he would never have thought that he would be met with such grievous news. How could he accept this? Qin Zhou only thought that he was asleep. Perhaps, to him, this was a form of relief in disguise. The dead could not be brought back to life. He only hoped that he could rest quietly. Chapter 2877. Even though it was late at night, many media outlets rushed over after hearing the news. They waited outside the hospital door stubbornly, waiting for the breaking news at the first opportunity. There were even worse media outlets who didn't care if they found out the truth of the matter. To protest Huan Yu's decision to lock down the hospital, they burned incense at the entrance of the hospital. There were also media outlets who secretly posted the news online. Soon, there were self-media outlets on Weibo that published such news. Xianxia jumped to his death due to depression? This headline was too sensational. It quickly attracted the attention of many fans. But how could the fans believe the media's one-sided story? There were no photos, no concrete evidence, and no official announcement. Naturally, the fans wouldn't buy it. They would treat it as a publicity stunt. Hence, a large number of fans quickly gathered under the Weibo account to hurl insults and accusations, accusing the unscrupulous media of making groundless accusations and inciting malicious rumors. Rumors? This was a rumor. Soon, this Weibo post was trampled on by Xianxia's army of fans. Within a short span of 10 minutes, it attracted hundreds of thousands of fans and tens of thousands of comments. It caused such a sensation that the Weibo server was paralyzed. The technical department dealt with it urgently, and the blogger was so frightened that he immediately shut down the comments function. Many fans had a frighteningly accurate sixth sense. They probably felt that this Weibo post was too sensational and there was no official announcement, so they panicked and felt that something must have happened to Xianxia. Hence, they went to Xianxia's Weibo and begged him to clarify the rumors. Xianxia's last Weibo post was still an announcement about Xianxia's withdrawal from the entertainment industry. The fans were eagerly anticipating. But what the fans didn't know was that this Weibo account would never be updated again. No matter how much the fans cried in the comment section, Weibo remained silent. Hua Jin had been standing guard at the entrance of the operating theater. As he was worried about Xianxia, he was completely distracted. Yu and Xiaoyichen were also extremely anxious. They didn't rush over immediately, so they didn't know what was going on with their mommy. However, the door to the operating theater kept opening and closing, and a group of nurses came in and out in a hurry. They didn't know what was going on. Then, a nurse in a pink uniform walked in. Hua Jin stood up with a look of shock on his face. Pink uniform. In this hospital, the only nurse who wore a pink uniform was from the gynecology department. He watched helplessly as a few gynecological nurses rushed in, and the door of the emergency room slammed shut again. Xiao Yichen was on the verge of tears. What should we do? Would Mommy be in any danger? It's been so long, why haven't they come out yet? I'm so scared. Yu immediately shouted at him, Don't talk nonsense. Mommy will be fine. Xiao Yichen's face was filled with tears. He felt extremely wronged. Qin Zhou, who had just walked out, heard Xiao Yichen's voice and walked over curiously. When he saw that they were there as well, he was even more confused. Why are you guys, Qin Zhou? Hua Jin jumped to his feet. Qin Zhou was Xianxia's manager. Seeing him, his anxious heart finally calmed down temporarily. Hua Jin, Xianxia is in the middle of an emergency surgery. Chapter 2878. When Qin Zhou heard Hua Jin mention Gu Xianxia, his expression darkened and he frowned. Xianxia is gone. Hua Jin was stunned for a few seconds. He quickly understood what he meant by gone. How could that be? He was in disbelief. When Yu heard this, she hurried over and asked, Uncle, what did you say? Uncle Xianxia is gone? But Qin Zhou suppressed his grief and said in a low voice, Let him rest well. He's been through a lot all these years. Both of them fell silent. Yu also looked regretful. Qin Zhou recalled what Hua Jin had said earlier and was suddenly jolted awake. What did you say? Xianxia is in the operating theater. What's wrong with her? She was sent in with Xianxia. I don't know the details. I didn't come early, but I heard that her face was covered in blood. I don't know where she was hurt. When Qin Zhou heard this, his expression turned serious. Why didn't you call me to inform me? I thought you knew. Hua Jin was a little annoyed. I saw you entering the hospital just now and hurrying off in another direction with a group of people. I thought you knew about Xianxia's matter, but I didn't expect Xianxia. How long has Xianxia been in the operating theater? About 2 hours. Then, did you inform Chairman Mu? Hua Jin immediately said, He was the one who informed me first. After that, he said that he had something urgent to attend to and left first. He asked me to stay here and take care of her. Why isn't Daddy back yet? Xiao Yichen mumbled in confusion. Yu immediately said, He probably had something important to attend to and didn't have time to explain it to us. Qin Zhou suddenly felt troubled. In just one night, both of them had met with mishaps. He still didn't know how to handle Gu Xianxia's matter or how to announce this bad news to the public. If the fans knew about this, they would definitely be devastated. However, he couldn't hide it for long. Many people in the hospital had seen Gu Xianxia's remains and knew that Gu Xianxia was dead. Even if Huan Yu did not make any official announcement, the news would spread like wildfire. At that time, it would inevitably be a little tricky. Qin Zhou had to consider this carefully. But now that something had happened to Xianxia, he felt even more depressed. Hua Jin was so anxious that his forehead was covered in cold sweat. Qin Zhou immediately comforted him. Don't worry, since you stay here to guard her, if you lose your sense of propriety, who will take care of Xianxia? How can I not be worried? It's been so long and he still hasn't come out. Hua Jin was about to cry. Qin Zhou was about to say something. However, the door to the emergency room was suddenly pushed open. The nurses pushed the door open and walked out with a tray in their hands. On the tray was a gauze stained with blood. Hua Jin was frightened when he saw this. He immediately went up to the nurses and asked, Nurse, what's going on inside? The nurse looked him up and down and asked, Are you her family member? Hua Jin nodded solemnly. The nurse asked a little angrily, The patient is pregnant. Did you know about this? What? Hua Jin was shocked and Qin Zhou was even more stunned. Yu and Xiao Yichen were even more frightened when they heard this. Chapter 2879. The nurse asked angrily, The patient is pregnant. Did you know about this? What? Hua Jin turned pale with fright, and Qin Zhou was stunned. Yu and Xiao Yichen turned pale with fright when they heard this. Xiao Yichen's eyes widened. What? Mommy is pregnant. Yi was also stunned. The nurse sized them up and was puzzled by their surprised expressions. It can't be, right? The patient is already 7 weeks pregnant. You didn't know about this. Hua Jin frowned and said worriedly, we didn't know. Because she hasn't had any abnormal reactions recently, such as vomiting. We haven't seen her having any morning sickness. Not everyone will have morning sickness. Some pregnant women don't have such reactions. Moreover, it's only 7 weeks. It's still so early, so there might not be any morning sickness. However, there are obvious differences between pregnant women and ordinary people. For example, they are especially sleepy. After the nurse finished speaking, Yu immediately asked, Nurse, how is Mommy? Is her life out of danger? You said that she's pregnant. Then, is the baby in her stomach safe? His face was full of anxiety and worry. The nurse saw that he was cute and sensible. She immediately squatted down and patted his head gently. She smiled and said, Your mommy's life isn't in danger. Xiao Bao in her stomach is also fine. However, her eyes are injured, so her vision might be a little impaired. It's fine as long as she's fine. What everyone didn't know was that even though Xianxia had fallen to the ground, she had been tightly protected in Gu Xingza's arms. During the worst fall, Gu Xingza had used his entire body to protect her and took all the damage for her. Hence, the baby in Xianxia's arms was fine. As long as she's fine. The most important thing was that Xiao Bao in Mommy's stomach was safe. Daddy doesn't know about this, right? If Daddy knew that Mommy was pregnant, he would probably be excited, nervous, and worried, wouldn't he? She must be worried sick. He had originally planned to immediately tell his father about this matter. However, after careful consideration, if his father were to find out, he didn't know what to do. However, as long as Mommy is not in danger, that's good. Yu's heart had just calmed down when she suddenly realized something. She frowned again and asked in confusion, Nurse, what do you mean by Mommy's eyes are injured and her vision is impaired? Hua Jin also said nervously, Yes, nurse. I also want to ask, what do you mean by eye injury, and to what extent is vision impairment? During the operation just now, a lot of glass fragments were removed from the patient's eyes. These glass fragments entered the eye and pierced the cornea, causing a great deal of damage. The human cornea is very fragile, but it has the ability to repair itself. However, if the injury is serious, it may cause permanent loss of vision. Permanent loss of vision? Hua Jin raised his eyebrows and questioned, Can you take it as blindness? You can put it that way. If you want to recover your vision, you can only consider a cornea transplant. The nurse hurried away. Hua Jin and Yu looked at each other, their morale low. Xiao Yichen, who was beside them, only understood half of what was going on. However, he vaguely heard the phrase, permanent loss of vision, and was quite shocked. Chapter 2880. Yu was dumbfounded. Blindness. How could that be? The three of them lowered their heads, each with mixed feelings. He was happy that her life was no longer in danger. At least she was fine. More importantly, the flesh and blood in her stomach were finally safe. They were worried that Xianxia's cornea was seriously damaged. The glass was very hard, and the cornea was not damaged at all. Her eyes were so fragile that they couldn't even tolerate sand, let alone glass shards. Hua Jin's heart ached. Yu, on the other hand, gritted his teeth in hatred. Mommy wouldn't have done something like this for no reason. Someone must be behind this. Someone must have done something to her. Who did this to Mommy? After Yu thought about it, a person's face suddenly appeared in his mind. Yan Bingqing. Yu clenched his fists as he locked onto Yan Bingqing's face. No matter how smart he was, he would never have guessed that the culprit behind this incident was Yun Na. He had no idea that Yun Na was still alive and had returned to the capital. Not too long ago, Ji Yan and his mother had quite a bit of dispute. Later, when he investigated Ji Yan's background, it confirmed his conjecture that Ji Yan was Yan Bingqing. He was furious at the thought of this. Little Munchkin was certain that Yan Bingqing was the one who had harmed his mommy. Therefore, he hated her to the core. He immediately walked to the side, took out his phone, and dialed Li Hanlin's number. In the middle of the night, Li Hanlin was awakened by the phone call. When he learned of the matter, he immediately agreed to send someone to detain Yan Bingqing, who was also Ji Yan. When he returned to the operating room after the call, Qin Zhou was already busy dealing with Gu Xingze. The door of the operating room happened to open. Yu Yu immediately rushed forward and saw a group of nurses and doctors pushing an operating table out in a hurry. Hua Jin immediately rushed over. Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen also ran over to the operating bed. They held onto the edge of the bed worriedly and looked at the patient lying quietly on the bed. Yun Shirshir lay on the surgical wound. Her body was straight, and her face was as pale as a sheet of paper. Her eyes were covered by white gauze, but the blood that seeped through the gauze could not be covered. Hua Jin was even more worried when he saw it. Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen were especially heartbroken. The local anesthesia was used for the surgery, and the effect of the anesthesia wore off very quickly. As soon as she stepped out of the operating theater, Yun Shirshir suddenly reacted. She grabbed the bedsheets tightly and tried to open her eyes. However, the sticky marks at the corners of his eyes seemed to have glued his eyelids together. It hurt when he opened his eyes. She clenched her teeth in pain and reached out instinctively as if she wanted to grab onto something. Yu Yu wanted to reach out, but Hua Jin was one step ahead of him and held her hand tightly. Shirshir, it's okay? I'm here, it's okay, Xingze. Yun Shirshir instinctively said a name that shocked him. Hua Jin was stunned. However, he heard Yun Shirshir ask anxiously with a sobbing tone, Xingze? How is Xingze? Her voice sounded very weak and weak. Even so, she still stubbornly wanted to know if Gu Xingze was safe and sound. Hua Jin bit his lip. He did not know what had happened at that time, but now was not the time to find out. They had just come out of the operating theater, so the first thing they should do was to have a good rest. Shirshir, don't think too much for now. You'll be in the ward soon. Have a good sleep and don't think about anything. We'll talk about it when you wake up. Chapter 2881. Yun Shirshir persisted. Where's Xingze? I want to see him, I want to see him. See him? Even the doctor couldn't bear to listen to this. Miss Yun, your eyes can't see normally now. If you want to see anyone, you have to wait until your eyes recover. My eyes aren't important. What's important is... Seeing that she couldn't communicate with them normally, Yun Shirshir tried to get up. Hua Jin immediately held her down. Shirshir, listen to me. Don't mess around. In your current condition, you can't get out of bed at all. Why didn't you tell me about Xingze's condition? Yun Shirshir turned her head to him. Her lips were trembling and extremely pale, as if they had been brushed with a layer of powder. Is he? She suddenly reached out and grabbed Hua Jin's wrist tightly. A tear quickly flowed down along with a light amount of blood. Is he okay? Please, tell me. Hua Jin couldn't bear to tell her the truth. At the side, Yu Yu mustered his courage and said, Mommy, don't ask any more. I just heard that Uncle Xingze has fallen into a deep sleep forever. The child had a delicate mind and wasn't good at using such a cruel word like dead. To him, deep sleep was probably an acceptable way of saying it. When Yun Shirshir heard this, her expression froze. Her body froze as if she had turned into a fossil and she didn't move at all. All of a sudden she laughed. Apparently she didn't think so. Impossible. He can't be dead. You're lying to me. Seeing her like this, Yu Yu's heart ached so much that he almost suffocated. He would rather suffer such pain than see his mommy trapped in such a cruel hell. It's impossible for him. It's impossible for him to die so easily. Yun Shirshir's lips suddenly parted into a smile, but the expression on her face was very hollow, as if it would completely collapse in the next second. Everyone noticed her abnormality, probably because it was hard to accept such a sudden change. Hua Jin's heart ached as he covered the back of her hand and comforted her. Shirshir, don't be sad. The most important thing right now is to think about how to take care of yourself. How can I not be sad? Without any warning, she started to cry hysterically. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. I want to see him, I want to see him. Even if it was the last time, Yun Shirshir got up abruptly. The operating table was still moving. She jumped off the bed without thinking and fell to the ground. The retention needle in his hand fell off, and blood splattered all over the floor. She didn't care about the pain from the fall and hurriedly got up from the ground. She stood up with difficulty and her hands fumbled around randomly. When Hua Jin saw this, he immediately rushed forward and hugged her shoulders. Sure, calm down. Can you calm down a little bit? Don't be like this. Don't punish yourself like this. Yu and Xianxia also rushed over and each held one of her arms. Mom, don't scare Yu. Don't force yourself, okay? If Uncle Xianxia was still alive, he wouldn't want to see you like this. I'm guessing that Uncle Xianxia must be trying to protect Mommy. Uncle Xianxia must be relieved that Mommy is safe and sound. So, Mommy, don't let Uncle Xianxia down. Chapter 2882. If it weren't for me, he wouldn't have died. It's all my fault. Xianxia was utterly defeated and burst into tears. Yu's heart ached when he heard that. Uncle Xianxia was dead. He was even more worried that Mommy would live in guilt forever. In this world, the heaviest and most unbearable thing was guilt. He was grateful for Gu Xingzia's sacrifice, and his heart ached for Uncle Xingzia's devotion to Mommy. However, his heart ached even more for Mommy, who would forever live in self-blame. Xianxia pursed her lips and her tears fell uncontrollably. She choked and said, "At least let me see him one last time. At least let me see him again. It's okay if I can't see him." Hua Jin took a deep breath and said, "Okay, I'll think of a way." 20 minutes later, Hua Jin helped Xianxia to the door of the morgue. Based on Qin Zhou's verbal instructions, the two of them were let in as usual. Yu and Xianxia were left outside. Xianxia couldn't see anything. Hua Jin helped her to a place and stopped in his tracks. She knew that the place beside her was probably where Gu Xingzia was parked. Xianxia sucked in a breath of cold air. Only then did she reach her hand in slowly. Her fingertips came into contact with a frightening coldness. It was so cold. It was unbelievable. Why would a person's skin become so cold after losing their body temperature after death? Touching such cold skin, Xianxia found it even harder to suppress the pain in her heart. Tears were about to fall again. Xingzia, thousands of words escaped from her throat, but it was filled with guilt. "I'm sorry." She collapsed to the ground weakly and knelt by the bed. She fumbled around and grabbed his curled hand. His slender fingers were extremely cold, without any warmth. She grabbed his hand, but she couldn't get anything in return. Her heart was filled with anticipation. In the next second, he quietly held her hand. Then, he sat up from the bed and smiled mischievously. He scratched her nose and told her, "I'm just teasing you, little fool." She would never be angry. However, all these seemed to be wishful thinking. She knew that he would never wake up again. But, she still had a lot to say to him. Thousands of words were stuck in his throat. He couldn't say them, and it was hard for him to swallow them. "Xingzia," Xianxia sobbed. "Wake up, just give me a few seconds. I just want to tell you that I will never forget you." "Will you forget me? In your heart, will you retain even a second of my memory?" Of course. Xianxia was extremely regretful. She shouldn't have said that and let him misunderstand. However, she thought that if she said that, he would close his eyes unwillingly. Unexpectedly, he believed her and left with regrets. She couldn't bear to. She wanted to tell him, "I won't forget you." "Xingzia, can you hear me? Can you hear me?" Xianxia said humbly, "I'm willing to use 10 years of my life in exchange for a glance from you. Open your eyes and look at me, okay?" When Hua Jin saw this, he couldn't bear it. He thought that the name Gu Xingzia would probably be engraved in her heart forever. He reached out to hug her, but he heard her cry even more heart-wrenchingly. Xingzia, when he heard her cry, his heart felt like it was being stabbed. Chapter 2883. Don't be sad, okay? My heart aches when I see you like this. Xianxia could not stop crying and sobbing. She did not seem to be the type of person who would cry to the heavens and the earth. She clung to the edge of the bed and gripped the bedsheets tightly, crumpling them into a ball. She gritted her teeth and tried to hold back her tears, but she could not control them at all. It was as if the world had completely collapsed. One look and one could tell how desperate she was at this moment. She kept feeling that everything in front of her was a dream. She cried enough and woke up from her dream. When she woke up, Xianxia was still alive. However, every time she closed her eyes, the scene in the parking lot would replay itself. Every time she thought about how Xianxia was in her arms and how he struggled to open his eyes and say those words with great difficulty, his weak but smiling expression seemed to say, "Sure, please don't be sad. I don't regret it." However, she regretted it. She was sad. She would break down. She did not believe that Xianxia had died just like that. He had really died just like that. She also did not believe in the nonsense that people would go to heaven after they died. When people died, they really did not exist anymore. However, there were so many beautiful things in this world that he had never experienced. His life should not have come to an abrupt end just like that. When he flew to America, it might have been the beginning of a new life. He might have welcomed a new life with a girl who loved him and he loved her too. The two of them met, got to know each other, fell in love, and finally held hands for the rest of their lives. In her heart, Xianxia had always left a beautiful image of her. He deserved to be happy, he deserved to be happy. But now, it was just as Xianxia had said. He came to this world coldly and lived coldly. In the end, he fell asleep coldly and was alone for the rest of his life. Xianxia was crying like a madwoman. She was crying in despair. Even though she didn't cry herself hoarse, she was on the verge of collapse. Huajin finally couldn't take it anymore. His eyes reddened as he knelt down beside her and hugged her shoulders. He hugged her tightly and said painfully, "Sister, if I can bear it for you, I'm willing to bear it for you. But don't force yourself like this, okay?" Hot tears fell on her shoulders. Huajin also began to cry sadly. The dead cannot be brought back to life. No one would have expected such a thing to happen. I know that Senior Xianxia likes you and cherishes you in his heart. Even if he were to do it all over again, I think he would still make the same choice. However, he definitely doesn't want you to punish yourself like this. It's not your fault. Why don't you let yourself go? Let yourself go? She cried and shook her head, unable to say a single word. She cried and so did he. She cried because she was sad that Xianxia had left. He cried because he suddenly realized that Xianxia would definitely become a thorn in her heart. This thorn would probably never be removed, and with every breath, the pain would be deep in her heart. However, he definitely couldn't allow her to continue crying like this. Not to mention her eyes, he couldn't let her tears fall. It was because he was worried about the unborn fetus in her stomach that he couldn't let her cry like this. Huajin hardened his heart and immediately used his hand as a knife. Xianxia only felt a pain at the back of her neck. Her vision suddenly turned black and she fainted. Chapter 2884. Huajin's heart ached as he gently caressed her face and rested his hand on her forehead. His heart ached terribly. When she was sad, he was sad too. The more she cried, the more he wished he could die for Xianxia. She wouldn't be that sad, would she? Just as he was letting his imagination run wild, there was a loud bang behind him. Wuxia broke through the door. Sure. He rushed through the door and saw the person in Huajin's arms. He was stunned and rushed over to take her from Huajin's arms. Sure. Wuxia gently caressed her face. It was terrifyingly cold and there was no sign of life. He couldn't help but frown. He looked up and asked, "What's wrong with her?" "Brother-in-law, don't worry. She's just fainted temporarily." Huajin immediately explained. She insisted that she wanted to see Senior Xianxia one last time, so I brought her here. But perhaps she couldn't accept reality, so she kept crying. I was worried that it would affect her body, so I knocked her out with a karate chop. She'll wake up after resting for a while. Upon hearing this, Wuxia glanced at the person lying quietly on the bed. Xianxia's eyes were closed quietly. The clothes on his body had been removed, and a white bedsheet covered up to his shoulders. His appearance had been tidied up. At first glance, it looked as if he had only slept for a short while. It was extremely quiet. Usually, people who died from serious injuries would die in an extremely hideous manner because of the immense pain. However, Xianxia's expression was very calm. No one knew what kind of dream he was having. Mu Yazhe suddenly felt complicated. He didn't know how to feel about Gu Xingzi. In the past, he probably only felt disgust towards him. But after this incident, he couldn't bring himself to hate this love rival of his. He had always thought that Gu Xingzi's feelings for Yun Shirshir were just a spur of the moment, or that he was restless because he couldn't get her. Men's desire to conquer women and their careers were the most obvious. The more he couldn't get someone, the more intense his desire to conquer them would be. Mu Yazhe thought that Gu Xingzi's feelings for Yun Shirshir were purely driven by his desire to conquer her. But she didn't expect this man's love to be so deep. He was actually willing to sacrifice himself. However, he couldn't care less right now. Mu Yazhe carefully carried Yun Shirshir in his arms and left in a hurry. Hua Jin followed closely behind. Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen followed closely behind. When they arrived at the intensive care unit, Mu Yazhe gently placed her on the bed and covered her with a blanket. Hua Jin also heaved a sigh of relief. "How is she?" Mu Yazhe immediately asked. Hua Jin immediately repeated what the doctor had said. Finally, he observed Mu Yazhe's expression and said slowly, "Shirshir is pregnant. Do you know?" She was pregnant. Mu Yazhe suddenly turned his head and looked at him with a pair of sharp eyes. He seemed to be suspicious. "What did you say?" Hua Jin patiently repeated, "She was found to be pregnant. The doctor said that she's about 7 weeks pregnant." Mu Yazhe's entire body stiffened. He turned his head and looked at Yun Shirshir. His eyes were filled with emotions and his expression was complicated. Pregnant, she was pregnant. This news made him both surprised and happy. However, he was still worried. Chapter 2885. He was worried that her emotions would be too unstable and she would not be able to make it through the first 3 months. The first 3 months were the most dangerous time for a pregnant woman. If she did not take care of the fetus well, the fetus would stop developing and might not even have a heartbeat during the first 3 months. Based on her emotions, if she continued to drip, the fetus would die prematurely. When that happened, it would be a huge blow to her. She was afraid that she would be sent straight to hell. Hua Jin seemed to have guessed what he was worried about and hurriedly comforted him, but, fortunately, the fetus is fine. If she recuperates well, her condition should be stable in a few weeks. Mu Yazhe leaned on the bed and held her hand with heartache. He stabilized the back of her hand and gently pecked her fingertips. "She will get better," he said softly. It was not clear if he was comforting Hua Jin or Yun Shirshir. In the ward, when Yun Shirshir woke up, her eyes were covered with heavy gauze. She could hear the doctor and Mu Yazhe talking in a heavy tone. Mu Yazhe sat by the bed expressionlessly and listened quietly. It was so quiet that there was almost no sound. Hua Jin stood beside him and listened attentively. His face was filled with nervousness and worry as he looked at the doctor anxiously. On the other hand, Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen looked grave. Hua Jin looked haggard as he did not have a good night's rest. Mu Yazhe looked the same. The doctor buried his head in writing a report, but his face was not as cold as a doctor. He carefully sized up Yun Shirshir, who was lying on the bed, and looked at Mu Yazhe with trepidation. He said with some regret, "Mr. Mu Yazhe, your wife's cornea was damaged by a sharp object. As a result, her eyesight is damaged and there is a high possibility that she will lose her sight." Hua Jin did not look too good after hearing that. His face was ashen, but he still had a glimmer of hope and asked tentatively, "Doctor, what do you mean? What blindness?" The doctor raised his head. Behind the thick lenses, there was a helpless look in his eyes. His tone was calm. "It means that her vision value is only 0.03. Her eyes have almost lost all vision and cognition. She can only slightly perceive light." Hua Jin blacked out. Yu Yu, who was standing at the side, staggered and almost lost his balance. Yun Shirshir had already woken up. When she heard this conclusion, she could not help but clench her fists. Her throat tightened. At that moment, his heart almost fell into the abyss of despair. She couldn't see, but she could clearly feel Mu Yazhe holding her hand tightly, his fingertips trembling slightly. She also heard Hua Jin's heartbroken question. Then Shirshir's? Shirshir's eyes can't be treated? Can't be cured? Not necessarily. If cornea transplantation can be considered, the sooner the better. After all, it is difficult to find donors in the medical institutions in China. Even if a suitable donor is matched, the surgery may not be successful. So, you have to be mentally prepared. However, considering that she is pregnant, the surgery can't be rushed. After all, as a pregnant woman, there is still a lot of risk in the surgery. On the bed, Yun Shirshir's body suddenly froze. What? Pregnant? Pregnant woman,